AC, PLC. Come on. AC, PLC. That's right. AC, PLC. Hillsborough, get your library card for free. AC, PLC. AC, PLC. Come on. AC, PLC. Come check out your local library. Say what? A library card? Come and get it, man, it ain't that hard. Proof of Hillsborough County address, photo ID, yeah, and we'll do the rest. No headaches or no stress. No DJ Khaled, but we the best. Library card for free, that's a major key. About to break it down now and you will see. Talking about lit? Yeah, we got lit. Customer service, yeah, we bout it. Overdrive Hoopla for your ebooks. RB digital magazines, look. Wanna learn a new language? Mango. Korean or Spanish in your brain, bro. You thought we were just books, but you didn't know. What the library offers, so insane, yo. AC, PLC. Come on. AC, PLC. That's right. AC, PLC. Hillsborough, get your library card for free.
Flossing in the morning is a really great way to keep your teeth healthy and start the day. But when you're through, here's what you do. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. There's a problem lots of people don't know, called sanitary sewer overflow. A condition buried deep in the ground, inside a pipe where bad clouds are found. It's a problem we can all help solve, so throw it in the trash, don't flush it. Baby wipes, bandages, cotton pads, paper towels, dental floss, clog up bad. Medicines, kitty litter, cotton swabs, hair. Throw them in the trash, don't flush it. It just takes a second to do the right thing, so toss it and let's keep our pipes clean. Throw it in the trash, don't flush it. If it's not toilet paper, don't flush it. Even if it says you can, don't flush it. If you're having any doubts, don't flush it. One more time, don't flush it.
Good evening, and welcome to your Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization Board and Public Hearing Meeting. Will everyone please rise for the invocation and for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our gracious and heavenly Father, we're thankful that you allow us to come out today to work on behalf of this great county that we call our home. We know that we might not always be on one accord, but we all know that whatever side you're on, we're working to make this county the best it possibly can be. We ask you to be with us tonight as we make these decisions. We ask that you regulate our minds and humble our hearts as we go through the process that might be kind of tedious, Father, but we know that it's all for the betterment of this county. And when we leave this place, we ask you to take us back to our homes to find everything safe and sound. These are all blessings we ask in your righteous and holy name. Amen. First on the agenda is to read into the public record a memo from Commissioner Ken Hagan. Says, please be advised that due to a previously scheduled conference, I'll be able to attend tonight's MPO public hearing. I'll be representing the county at the Florida Association of Counties annual conference. Commissioner Merman, as a designated alternate, will attend the meeting instead. Please read the reason of my absence to the record. Thank you. Commissioner Merman is running a little late, and so is School Board Member Stewart. They said that they will be here. Okay. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the May 8th, 2019 minutes. Hope you had a chance to peruse those, and we have a motion to approve them. So moved. There's a motion and a second. I think the motion was by Councilman Maniscalco, second by Commissioner Oldman to approve the minutes. No further discussion. All those in favor, let them know saying aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. Motion is adopted. We have a new member to this MPO, a newly elected City Council member, Mr. Joe Citro. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Glad to have you here. Anything you want to say?
Just proud to be here.
They like you now. They're applauding you now. It might be different by the time this meeting's over with, but okay, anything you want to say?
Nope. Thank you for letting me be here.
All right. Committee reports. Mr. Bill Roberts. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the MPO Board. My name is Bill Roberts. I serve as chairman of your MPO Citizens Advisory Committee. I have the pleasure of having been appointed to that committee by the Aviation Authority. I'd like to give our monthly report, if I may. The meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee was held on May 15th, the most recent one. Under public comment, 5 citizens commented on the TIP, urging the MPO not to prioritize improvements to the downtown interchange or the section of I-275 north of downtown. Under action items, the CAC voted to, number 1, recommend by a vote of 11-2 an amendment of the Imagine 2040 long-range transportation plan for Fast Act consistency and eliminating express toll lanes on I-275, Section 7, north of downtown. However, the CAC did not concur with the PD&E preferred alternative of adding 2 general use lanes in place of the express toll lanes. Secondly, the committee unanimously recommended approval of a transportation improvement plan amendment for pedestrian crosswalk at Florida and Idlewild. Thirdly, the committee recommended the fiscal year 2024 TIP by a vote of 11-1, however, with revisions. By a vote of 9-3, the committee recommended to delete priorities number 40, the Big Bend Road extension, and number 44, the widening of Ballum Road, due to concerns about promoting sprawl development. Secondly, by a vote of 10-2, the committee voted to strike priorities number 27, I-275 north of MLK to Barris, and number 28, safety and operational improvements to the downtown interchange, because the surrounding community has spoken against further capacity expansion. The CAC also expressed concerns with the last-minute revisions to the list of TIP priorities. The CAC also received a status report on the needs assessment for the 2045 upgrade of the long-range transportation plan. Under new business, your CAC discussed whether citizens need to be present to be represented at tonight's TIP public hearing. The CAC voted to recommend that the MPO consider the following rules for public comment. Number 1, speakers should be allowed more time if they represent groups, if not more than 4 people who have signed up to speak. Number 2, that they allow no more than 15 minutes per group. Number 3, that they allow not less than 2 minutes per individual speaker. And finally, that recommended that you do not have to be present to donate time as long as a signature is there indicated that the time was donated. In addition to our formal report, I have a few comments and observations from our CAC meetings that might be of interest to the members of the CAC. Although it has come before us as a committee, there seems to be general acceptance of the proposals to improve the West Shore interchange and improvements to the Howard Franklin Bridge. We look forward to receiving greater detail on these projects as they are approved by the MPO. There are members of the CAC who are quite concerned about the proposals for improvements to I-275 between MLK and Barris, as I'm sure you will hear later in this meeting. I want you to be aware that this item has been the subject of much discussion at our CAC meetings, and we appreciate the willingness of the MPO to receive our request last month to study the alternative known as the Boulevard concept. As a committee, we have not endorsed any particular alternative for this section of Interstate Highway. Although not unanimous, the committee voted to support eliminating express toll lanes from the long-range transportation plan, but was not in favor of increasing capacity on I-275 north of downtown. We look forward to continued discussion about the various alternatives, including dialogue with representatives of the FDOT. And finally, the CAC continues to express a keen interest in various forms of public transportation, with the hope that planners and policymakers will be able to come together sooner rather than later and put forth some concrete proposals for improving mass transit in our region. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions, Mr. Roberts. Thank you so very, very much. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members?
Ms. Torres?
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Gina Torres, the MPO staff. Just want to follow up on a couple of the other committee suggestions and what they talked about at their committees. So on your consent agenda, the BPAC reappointed Chair Jonathan Forbes to a citizen at large seat, and the Liverpool Roadways Committee welcomed Justin Willits and Christine Buchanan from HART to their committee. The committee supported the TIP amendment for the pedestrian crossing on Florida Avenue at Idlewild, which is item 5 on your agenda tonight. Regarding the public hearing for the LRTP and the TIP annual update, so in addition to the CAC's comments, the Technical Advisory Committee divided their motion into approving the consistency with the FAST Act unanimously and separately considered the Imagine 2040 Plan Amendment for Tampa Bay Next, Section 7, PD&E, which passed by an 11-to-1 vote, with one member requesting that line 27 be struck from the TIP. The Transportation Program and Priorities was approved also by a vote of 11-to-1. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee approved the TIP by a 13-to-3 vote, with concerns that infrastructure for bicyclists and pedestrians make up only 1.4% of the TIP funding. And the Liverpool Roadways Committee received 3 public comments asking for the removal of items number 27 and 28, but that motion did not get a second. They did approve the TIP with a recommendation that the MPO work with DOT on a comprehensive review of the I-4 interchange revisions from I-275 to 22nd Avenue and High Street, and how these changes impact the land use in adjacent areas of 14th, 15th, and 21st and 22nd Avenues. So that's the rest of your committee reports. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. We're now on the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion and a second? Second. Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Motion by David Mechanic, Mr. Mechanic, second by Commissioner Kemp. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. Motion is adopted. Move to consent agenda. We're now on the TIP amendment approved by committees. The Transportation Improvement Program amendment for pedestrian crosswalk on Florida Avenue at Idlewild. Is anyone, staff member, going to discuss that at all? No. The motion by Mr. Mechanic, second by Mayor Lott, to approve the. Yes, Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
We finally got it there. Thank you very much for making the motion and seconding it. I'm really glad to see this on the project list, so thank you.
Roll call vote.
Klug? Yes. Kemp?
Yes.
Mechanic? Yes. Chalura? Yes. Citra?
Yes.
Green? Hagan is absent. Scherberger?
Yes.
Lott?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Overman?
Yes.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Smith. Stewart is absent. Motion carried.
Okay, now moving to public hearing for long-range plan amendment and TIP annual update. Ms. McKinley.
All right. Good evening, Sarah McKinley, MPO staff. Tonight I have 3 presentations and one that I'm going to be giving, so I'm sorry for the length in advance, but we're going to go through this. We have first the Long-Range Transportation Plan for 2040 amendment, and then we'll be discussing the Transportation Improvement Program, Work Program, and then the Transportation Improvement Priority List as well. All right, so as far as the the Long-Range Transportation Plan 2040 amendment, currently today for I-275 north of the downtown interchange, we do have it slated for express toll lanes. Based on last year's Transportation Improvement Program hearing, there was a motion to remove those express lanes. So in a sense, this amendment is sort of correcting that motion and taking out the express toll lanes and maintaining the 2 general purpose lanes. As far as why we have this opportunity for this amendment tonight, there is now state and federal funding to move forward on this project, and this project would be or would not be stated to move forward until 2023. As far as what we're talking about, this would be the addition of 2 through lanes in the center of the interstate. And along with this, there would be no additional right-of-way acquisition to add these lanes. Along with this project, there's some opportunities to add aesthetics, including sound walls to help mitigate noise and traffic, as well as looking at some of the underpasses and looking at how we can provide opportunities to provide cutbacks, widening sidewalks, enhancing lighting, looking at opportunities for landscaping and also public art. Like I mentioned, there's also the opportunity for landscaping. In a summary, what this amendment will do and will not do, again, we're looking at adding a general purpose lane, 1 in each direction. This will also improve the ramps at Hillsborough and Bierce Avenues. Looking at those cutbacks and underpasses, also the opportunity to accommodate potential transit within the corridor, and then again, providing those sound walls and landscaping. The 2 things that it mostly will not do is looking at acquiring right-of-way from Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard to Bierce Avenue, as well as acquiring right-of-way in the Seminole Heights Historic District. There's also a second part of this amendment. Based on MAP 21 and the FAST Act, any long-range transportation plan amendment that we have after May 20th, 2019 triggers that we must include the system performance measures as part of that. These are those performance measures. As you can see, these were adopted by the MPO board in October of 2018, as well as February of this year. So what's the action today? Right now, it'll affect projects ID 1006, and this is what it'll look like, adjusting the alignments of the segments, as well as the 2 general use lanes, and this is what it looks like, sort of zoomed in. And again, you do have all these slides in front of you for your reference. As far as our committee recommendations, as you just heard, the Citizen Advisory Committee approved the plan amendment 11-2, but did not concur with the PD&E preferred alternative, and the Technical Advisory Committee improved the plan amendment from 11-1. That concludes the long-range transportation plan amendment. I'm going to move into the Transportation Improvement Program section of the presentation. This is for the fiscal years 20 through 24. As far as what the Transportation Improvement Program is, a lot of us are familiar with it, some of us are not. This is the 5-year work program. It shows the financial plan showing all the funding sources, as well as phases for each of the projects. Every year we highlight what changes, what are the major changes from year to year, as well as highlighting where federal funds are being spent. And then we include our local jurisdiction projects for sort of information and transparency purposes. As far as the MPO's role, MPO staff works with the jurisdictions to create and update what is called the priority list. This is found in Table 2 of the document. There are discretionary funds that we do have the ability to prioritize for, and these include federal funds for the Transportation Alternatives Program and the Surface Transportation Program. These amount to about $15 million a year for our county. They're divvied up between the transportation management area based on population. We also have some regional programs that we're able to prioritize for. This includes the Transportation Regional Incentives Program, or the TRIP, as well as Sun Trail. These are both state-funded programs. As far as the MPO board goes, you do have the ability to remove federally funded projects that have not begun the design phase, but you do not have the ability to direct how those funds are spent afterwards. As far as where we are in the process, we updated the priority list last June, as we do every June. We then hand that priority list off to DOT. Their work program works to create what is called the tentative work program. That tentative work program is given back or presented to the MPO's committees and board between November and December. And then we, as staff, take those comments that we receive from the committees and the board and provide them back to DOT. From there, DOT takes those comments, refines, and then in April, we get what is called the work program snapshot. The snapshot is what we're looking at tonight, and that is what we're looking at to approve. As far as what is in the work program this year, there is just under $1.8 billion in funding. This table or slide shows the breakdown as far as where those funding sources amount to. I'm not going to go in detail through each of these charts. You have them in front of you. As you can see, we this year, just to show the highway-related projects, we did remove the ports, airports, and rails because those tend to be an outlier in the pie charts, but we did include their totals in the table. As you can see, a large part of it is bridge and maintenance. That's that preserving the system category that we refer to so much. There's also the intersection and interchanges that are about 30% of the work program total as well, and then just under 13% of road widening. This is to show you what those fluctuation of percentages over the year amount to by each of those programs. And then this table here, this is showing you as far as those local capital improvement programs, how those amount as well. So as you can see, transit amounts to about 31%. Then we have road widenings just under 30%. And again, preserving the system is about 22%. Walk bike amounts for just over 2% of this total as well. As far as the allocation of funding, this slide refers back to those discretionary funds that I mentioned that we get to prioritize for. I'm going to go through some more of these projects later, but as you can see, these are a majority of walk bike projects, as well as providing funding to HART to keep up bus replacements and other programs for them, and then some programs that were prioritized by the jurisdictions. This is where I'm going to go through the project highlights from this year. So what has changed? What are the differences from last year? Again, just as a brief overview, this is still tied back to our Imagine 2040 long-range transportation plan. In that plan, we sort of moved towards performance-based planning. And as far as the first four buckets, these are our program buckets where we have preserving the system, looking at resurfacing bridge maintenance and maintaining the current bus system. Then we have reduces to crashes and vulnerability. This is where we look at our walk bike safety projects, as well as how are we vulnerable to storms and such. Minimizing traffic for drivers and shippers. This is looking at those intersection, interchange, signalization projects, looking at how can technology better improve the system. We also have real choices when not driving. This is our alternatives to driving, looking at expanding the bus service, more frequency of buses, as well as our trails program. The major capacity projects for economic growth, this is the one descriptive category we have, and these become those sort of big ticket items. So as you remember, we had the big interchange project at I-75, and initially that was a smaller ticket project, and then once we went for the ultimate build out at that sort of fell into a major capacity project. As far as our performance targets, I mentioned this as part of the long-range transportation plan. These are also included into the transportation improvement program. We did have a request from the Livable Roadways Committee to also look at non-SOV, single occupancy vehicle percentages, and look at trying to find a new target or a more aggressive target for those. We looked at that and determined that there was 19.8% non-SOV. This includes carpooling, transit, as well as walk, bike, telecommuting, those sorts of trips. So we've set a new proposed target as, or 5-year proposed target as 22% per that request from the Livable Roadways Committee. All right, so what are the projects that are new to the 5-year work program? Under preserving the system, you can see there's a number of resurfacing. We also have the transit. New this year is a $1 million annual allocation to HART for bus stop capital. We're continuing with the bus replacements, as well as we were able to move the CAD AVL, or the technology on the buses, forward for funding. And then various bridge improvements throughout the county. As far as our reducing crashes category, we do have some priorities from each the county, FDOT, and the city. The county wanted to look at their Vision Zero corridors within unincorporated counties, so we have some planning funds to look at corridor studies, as well as construction funds to look at intersections along State Road 60. We also have some projects that came out of the Heights Mobility Plan. We have some bikeways along Central Avenue in Ola, as well as some improvements on Highland from Violet to Hillsborough. We have the East Bush mid-block crossings included, and then from the city of Tampa, we also have some sidewalk improvements along El Prado, as well as a roundabout at Doyle Carlton and Laurel Street, and then some lighting projects that were also included via FDOT. As far as our smart technologies managing traffic category, we do have some signal improvements throughout the county, as well as some interchange improvements on I-4 in the eastern portion of the county, as well as what we call integrated corridor management. This was a priority for FDOT. This is looking at fiber optics technology, that kind of stuff along parallel corridors of the major arterials and state roads. For our Real Choices category, we have 2 projects. We were asked to advance the Green Artery segments D&E. This is sort of that northern segment along the river. This has been advanced for construction in this work program. And then we also have the next segment of the Green Spine from Nucio, or along Nucio from 7th to 13th for construction as well. As far as our major projects, like I mentioned, the Big Bend, it was a smaller project in the last work program. Our staff, as well as Hillsborough County staff and FDOT staff, were able to work together and try to secure and have been able to secure the funding for the ultimate build out in fiscal year 22, as well as moving forward with the MLK interchange at I-75. As far as the current status for the Tampa Bay Next projects, the Howard Franklin Bridge is fully funded for construction. That has moved off of our priority list and into Table 1, which is our table for projects that have fully been funded for construction. The West Shore Interchange, $74 million was added for right-of-way, and this remains the TMA's top priority. As far as I-75 from Lois to Willow, and the downtown interchange from Willow to MLK, these are both still under the SCIS, and no additional funding is within this current work program. There was a project added to add auxiliary lanes to accept the traffic from the 2 additional lanes between MLK and Hillsborough, as well as the addition of the design build fund in 2023 for the lanes from MLK to Hillsborough. I include this map just for reference. All right, now we're at our final portion of the presentation. This is where we talk about the priorities for future funding. So this is fiscal years 21 through 25. Again, this is tied back to our long-range transportation plan. We use the way that we prioritize projects from that plan to also analyze and help rank those projects. The definitions for each of these categories are also on that big 11 by 17 priority table you have in front of you. As far as updating the priorities, every year in June, again, we update the priorities. And then in February of every year, we begin what we call the World Tour. We go out and we meet with each of the jurisdictions, and we go over what their previous priorities were, along with what their new priorities are. We discuss all these, and then by March 15th, they provide us a letter in writing with their new and carrying over or existing priorities they would still like to move forward with. And then by March 31st, they present present any applications they have to FDOT. These then are shared through our committees between April and May, and then here we are back in June to go through and approve these priorities. As far as the new priorities this year, we have priorities that we've received from FDOT and the county. We have some corridor safety projects that we've received from FDOT, including Fowler from I-275 to I-75. We also have 56th and 50th Street from State Road 60 to Bush, 40th Street from State Road 60 to Hillsborough, as well as Dale Mabry at Spruce. There's also 2 intersection improvements we received from the county. This is US 301 at Riverview Drive, as well as 50th Street at Palm River. And then along US 92, we received a request for intersection improvements from FDOT, and this is at various locations between I-4 and Polk County line. As far as the additional priorities, we do have, again, priorities 27 and 28. These have been mentioned through our committees. There was a modification to priority 28 to modify some of the language. The language that was modified reads, reconfiguration of I-4 eastbound exit to Ybor will be evaluated in consultation with the City of Tampa. I just wanted to make sure that we pointed out that language to you. There's also the Gibsonton interchange at I-75. This request has moved forward from the smaller project that is in the TIP now to work forward getting the ultimate build out. We had 2 additional requests from the county. This is the Big Bend extension from Boggy Creek to Balm Road. And then we also had the Balm Road widening and also to include a side path. This is from US 301 to Clement Pride. We also include our Transportation Management Area Leadership Group recommendations. As far as the unfunded priorities, I've noted where they align with our priorities. Again, the West Shore interchange, as well as Gibsonton Drive interchange, and the operational improvements north of downtown Tampa. As far as our committee recommendations go, from the Citizen Advisory Committee, they did approve the TIP with the request to remove priorities 27, 28, 40, and 44. Again, 27 is the I-275 north of MLK to north of Beers. 28 is the safety operation improvements to the downtown interchange. 40 is the Big Bend road extension, and then 44 is the Balm Road widening. The livable roadways, you heard a summarization, or I guess this is a summarization of what you heard. They did ask for a comprehensive land use analysis to go along with the ramp modifications along I-4 in Ybor City. The Technical Advisory Committee and the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committees both approved the TIP with no changes. As far as the recommendations for tonight, your recommended actions are to approve the amended long-range transportation plan to be consistent with the FAST Act by including the system performance report, as well as eliminating the express toll lanes on I-275 north of downtown, making it consistent with the alternative for the Tampa Bay Next Section 7 PD&E, as well as approve the Transportation Improvement Program for fiscal years 20 through 24 and the Transportation Improvement Program priorities for future funding. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions on the presentation?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I do have a motion.
Yes,
And
sir.
that was an excellent presentation by Sarah McKinley, but in order to provide some additional clarity, I move that we allow District Secretary David Gwynn to make a brief presentation to explain the FDOT's request.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to allow Secretary Nguyen to make a brief presentation. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion adopted. Secretary Nguyen.
No, and I'll try to make this brief. I don't have a presentation, so I just have a few words I wanted to share. First, thank you very much for the opportunity to summarize the items that FDOT's requesting tonight. Those being to improve the LRT amendment for the I-275 north of MLK to Bears, which is known as Segment 7, and to approve the draft TIP priority list, including the operational improvements for the downtown interchange. I did want to say, we've been here a few years now talking about the Tampa Bay Next program. Over the past 4 years, this board has adopted a list of TIP priorities that included several interstate modernization projects, but as a condition of your approval, you also issued various motions requesting FDOT to improve our public engagement, report regularly to this board, and complete a detailed environmental study with technical support documents. You also asked us to invest more in transit and in bicycle pedestrian safety adjacent to the interstate. How have we responded? Because of your feedback, in 2016, we hit the reset button and diversified our conversation to include not just the interstates, but also transit options, smart technology, complete streets, bicycle pedestrian mobility, and freight movement. Over the past 2 years, we've engaged the public in a rigorous dialogue, including 35 public meetings, nearly 200 presentations, over 80 community events, and we established a proactive web and social media presence. We have provided regular updates to the MPO board and committees. We eliminated express lanes on I-275 North and developed new alternatives to reduce impacts to downtown Tampa. Nearly $30 million of MPO and District 7 funds have been allocated based on the Heights Mobility Study for height safety and mobility improvements. Most for projects which are still under study, but that we're putting the money in there to address those projects that we know are going to be developed as part of our studies. And we've invested in transit. Over $50 million in transit block grants for HART and PSTA over the next 5 years. Nearly $10 million for bus rapid transit studies to include arterial studies from USF to downtown. We invested $3 million in the streetcar to try to promote ridership, which I understand has tripled the ridership, greatly increasing the opportunity for us to obtain federal funding to do the modernization and expansion of the streetcar. We've committed $5 million to the HART maintenance facility, $10.5 million to the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit System, and millions more in service grants for projects like Inter-County Express Bus Service and ferries. Segment 7 has been in the TIP for years. This is not a new project. The only change we are asking for is to remove express lanes and replace with general purpose lanes. Currently, the single lane ramp from I-4 to I-275, from I-275 southbound, does not begin until south of MLK. And the single lane ramp from I-4 to northbound I-275 ends prior to MLK. All of that high volume of traffic has to merge in that short distance, causing major congestion and many crashes. The Segment 7 improvements would extend these lanes much further to the north and address these issues. Additionally, interchange improvements to the Martin Luther King interchange and the Hillsborough Avenue interchange would significantly be improved as part of this project and address the significant bottlenecks at these two locations. Noise walls would be included along the entire length. The inside shoulder would provide a dedicated transit right-of-way. All this will be done within the existing right-of-way, with the exception of a pond on vacant property north of Beers Avenue. Although in some places the pavement is going to be widened, it's all done within the existing FDOT property, which we call right-of-way. As for the downtown interchange, the answer certainly is not as clear. 3 years ago, we were moving forward with what we call Option A, the large footprint needing nearly 200 additional parcels. Some people show a 28-lane cross-section. That was what we were looking at 3 years ago. We since have produced 3 options that have smaller footprints called Options B, C, and D, which require anywhere between 50 and 200 parcels. All of those included express lanes. At this point, based on our dialogue with various parties, the public, we have decided not to pursue any of these 4 options for funding. And if we were to pursue funding for these options in the future, we would need to reevaluate and we would need to bring it before you to add it to the LRTP and the TIP. So we'd have to come before this board again. But as we abandon our current pursuits of any funds for options A through D, we cannot ignore the safety concerns, including the over 1,500 crashes a year that occur within the limits of the downtown interchange. And so we developed an option based on these recent decisions to not fund A, B, C, or D that would allow us to address these bottleneck conditions and do it in a very minimalistic manner that would have very little impact in the surrounding area, almost all within our existing right-of-way. We're asking to add the project to the priority list as a replacement to A through D, which you're taking off of the priority list, and which we agree with. This is no different than the decision to add the Heights Mobility Study $30 million items, even though study is still going forward. That's how we program funds. We don't wait until we get to the end of the study to try to look for 5 years out funding. So we're not asking for anything that we don't do in the normal course of our business. And what is the operational improvement? It's adding a second lane to southbound I-275 to eastbound I-4, a much needed improvement. Adding a second lane from westbound I-4 to northbound I-275, which when tied into the segment 7 improvements will allow you to go between those two facilities without having to merge immediately after you go from one facility to the other. Improving the weave and merge conditions in the interchange by providing greater separation of decision points. These improvements have all been shown to the public as portions of other SEIS options, but only minor parts of those options. None of these are a new option. We can address the major crash problems with no more than 6 parcels, all on the north side of I-4, just to the east of I-275. And those parcels are all essentially surrounded by properties that we've already bought. They're properties that are kind of in the area that we already showed in all our options would likely be impacted. So what's next? Obviously, we're going to continue to work with the MPO city and local community, and this is not the last time you'll see this operational improvement project. There'll be plenty of opportunities for the public and for you to look at this before you'd ever be asked to put it in your tip. There's an MPO special briefing number 3 focused on traffic and safety late this summer. We're planning to have small group meetings throughout the fall and winter leading up to the public hearing in early 2020. If you approve these projects, you strengthen our region's ability to look for more funding. We can keep the funding we already have, the $80 million that we've set aside in strategic intermodal system funding. If you don't have this in your plan, we don't have planning consistency, and that money goes back into the pool statewide for whoever can prove that they have a worthy project to get that $80 million. The reason you will begin to see the projects in the planning phase go into the priority list is so we can begin to budget the funding we need for construction. If we wait until the end of the planning and design phases, it'll take even longer to try to find that funding. Again, no different than how we do other projects. Remember that rejecting SIS funds like the $80 million at stake this evening will not increase spending for transit, safety, or arterial roadway improvements by a single penny. It cannot be used for those purposes. It's designed for strategic intermodal system capacity projects, and they're allocated statewide. They're not given to us just because we have a certain portion of the population. We have to compete for it. So in closing, keep in mind, this is not the final chance you're going to get to look at these projects. You're not approving us to go out and start building these. It's part of the process. We will continue to work with the local agencies in the community and look to continue to minimize impacts. But in order to address the growth that we're seeing and that we're anticipating in the region, I really do think we need to have an and approach. I think I've been hearing a lot that we need to do either highway capacity or we need to do transit. An either or. I do feel that's a false choice. I think we can do both. And I don't think we need to penalize highway users in order to try to promote better transit usage. I think we promote better transit usage by providing better transit. And we provide better highway options along with that. So again, I'm asking you to please approve what we're asking for, the 2 items that were summarized before, approving the LRTP amendment for I-275 Segment 7, and approving the draft TIP priority list.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Let me set some ground rules here, okay? We have 5 hours of public comment. 5 hours, okay? Now, we get into questioning the secretary now. We're going to move into 6 or 7 hours. You have an opportunity at the end of public comment, if the secretary is still here, to ask comment questions.
I'll be here.
He'll be here, all right? So, thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 hours more plus a public comment. Now, we're going to set some rules. If you need all 3 minutes, you have 3 minutes. If you don't have to use all your 3 minutes, you'll be very thankful of you doing that. Okay? We have some people that have allocated their time to others to speak. To give them more time, I would need those people that are allocated those time to stand up and say that they're allocating their time. So if they're not here, you don't get it. Follow me? You understand? Any objection? Don't worry about it. Okay. We're now moving to public comment. First speaker is Karen Giroch.
Good evening, board members. My name is Karen Giroch, and I live in Northwest Hillsborough County, and I'm not paid to be here. I am here to encourage you to vote yes to include the I-275 operational improvements that Secretary Gwynn just outlined into the 2040 LRTP and the TIP. I drive this section often, getting from Northwest Hillsborough to Brandon, Orlando, Plant City, all points in my daily business. Trying to merge onto the I-4 ramp is dangerous. That I-4 ramp has exceeded its design capacity. And likewise, when I return home, westbound on I-4, trying to merge from the Seldman Connector all the way over in Weave to the northbound I-275, it's very similarly perilous and in need of improvement. I support the alternative to add a general purpose lane in each direction on I-275 from downtown north to Barris Avenue. No additional right-of-way is required except near, from what I understand, Barris Avenue interchange for some stormwater ponds. The recent unanimous MPO board vote last month to study tearing down this same stretch of I-275 is very unsettling, as the MPO's own 2045 planning process actually screened out this scenario as the least favored by the public. This action by the MPO board breeds mistrust and skepticism that the public outreach process is tainted and not worth engaging in if their will is going to be subverted nonetheless. Not only does this put unincorporated residents at a large disadvantage, and we make up 68% of this county's population, but our neighbors in Pasco and Pinellas are worried about regional connectivity and hurricane evacuation. The perception is that opposition to the I-275 improvements downtown is to stall and instead begin the boulevard concept, which involves tearing down I-275, forcing residents in unincorporated county to suffer even more, and to, quote, ensure even more congestion so car travel is painful and transit adoption is quicker, according to the spokesperson leading the opposition group here tonight. Stalling these operational improvements is not an option. Crashes on this stretch are excessive, and it is unconscionable not to begin safety and capacity improvements immediately. I support widening I-275 from downtown to Barris and improving access to I-4. Please vote to include these improvements tonight when you vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Andrea Zellman.
Good evening, Andrea Zellman, and I'm here tonight representing the Board of Directors of the Tampa Downtown Partnership, and no, I'm not being paid to be here either. The Downtown Partnership serves as a steward of downtown Tampa. We cultivate public and private collaborations. We encourage the downtown's physical and economic development, and we advocate for the downtown community, which includes 235 member companies, 14,000 plus residents, and over 60,000 employees in downtown Tampa. We believe that I-275 is a vital piece of our local and regional transportation network, and it's a critical connection to downtown Tampa jobs, events, and economic opportunities. We believe that the incremental improvements proposed by FDOT are an immediate solution to a roadway that's already at capacity and is likely to become increasingly more congested as our population continues to grow. I don't have to tell you we're the 9th fastest growing region in the country, and Hillsborough County is the 10th fastest growing county in the nation. with 20,000 new residents just last year. And the improvements that you're considering tonight are critical to address congestion. All of the proposed improvements are within FDOT's existing right-of-way and include better access for transit. We look to the MPO to take reasonable and thoughtful action that represents the needs and interests of our downtown and our community at large. We ask you to amend the long-range transportation plan to include FDOT's preferred option for Tampa Bay Next Section 7 and vote to approve the draft TIP as presented. We know that there are many other questions to be answered regarding the long-term future of 275 and its role within the community, but we believe that in the near term we have to take action now. We also oppose any effort to strike the build alternative or TB Next projects from the TIP. We believe such action could cost FDOT hundreds of millions of dollars that are dedicated to critical operational improvements along the corridor. And we also worry that striking that build alternative could negatively impact our region's efforts to secure funding for the West Shore interchange. So again, as part of the business community in Tampa, as part of the representative again of the residents, businesses, and members of the Downtown Partnership, we again express our support for the recommended build alternative associated with I-275 north of MLK to north of Bears Avenue and the Transportation Improvement Program. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff has told me besides calling your name, I'll have to call your number also. We'll have people downstairs, let them know where we are. Now, number 3 speaker is Sharon Calvert.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Calvert, and I'm not paid to be here. And I even navigated the Howard Franklin Bridge because I came from Tierra Verde in Pinellas County. I support those I-275 improvements that Secretary Gwynn mentioned as well, and I ask that you keep them in the Transportation Improvement Plan and your long-range plans. I-275 is part of Florida's strategic transportation system, and it is vital to Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough counties. We just started hurricane season once again. And I-275, and especially for us in Pinellas County, serves as a major evacuation route in Tampa Bay. It's a major mobility corridor that moves over 250,000 people and hundreds of thousands of goods, services, and people every day. I was at the TMA meeting on Friday, and at that meeting, this is where the MPOs of Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough, they all agreed that these projects were regional priorities and were in their TIPs. Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, Pinellas County, MPO, sent a letter of support to FDOT to Secretary Gwynn. Pasco County approved a resolution in support of these projects. Cancer patients need this corridor to get to Moffett. Students, both at the campus at Tampa or St. Petersburg or Tampa, both need this corridor. Tourists use this corridor to Busch Gardens. Veterans use this corridor to the VA hospital. There should be no further delays in moving these critical projects forward for both safety and congestion. And this board represents the entire county and not just a small part of it. The tear down and boulevard concept, as was mentioned before, ranked last in your survey. Hundreds of millions of dollars were already sent elsewhere toward the Central Florida area due to delays. And I just ask that you not risk that occur again. I hope that a sense of reality and common sense prevails tonight. And again, I ask you that those 275 improvements, including north of downtown and Malfunction Junction, continue in your plans going forward. Thank you.
Number 4 speaker is Wilhelm Nunn.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Willie Nunn. I'm a business owner here in Tampa, and I'm not paid to be here. I support the recommended improvements. I think we're all aware that from a quality of life standpoint, we rank nearly last in the nation in terms of public transit. And I was particularly intrigued as part of the proposal, the right-of-way available for future bus rapid transit and other transportation alternatives. So it's my sincere hope that you approve the recommended approvals. I think the boulevard concept is intriguing and attractive, needs a whole lot more study, and realistically, that is a 20 to 30 year away kind of program and build. And considering that, I believe that the proposed safety and quality of life improvements are warranted now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our fifth speaker is David Green.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Green, Executive Director of TBARTA, the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority, and I'd like to express TBARTA's support for TB Next and specifically the improvements to I-275 north of downtown Tampa. TBARTA understands the importance of our transportation corridors as well as our responsibility to improve and increase their capacity as required by a rapidly growing population. In fact, we agree that simply building more highways is not the solution, just as expanding transit alone won't fix our problems. We're committed to reducing traffic congestion by providing more efficient regional transit, including a bus rapid transit project now in development for this very stretch of interstate. TB Next allows us to expand BRT options and in turn reduce the number of cars on the highway. We'll meet today's needs and alleviate further need to expand I-275 again and again, but we can't benefit from the reduced traffic regional BRT will bring if we don't improve I-275. This expansion accommodates space for transit, which in turn will help us reduce the number of cars using the highway now and for years to come. The TIP as proposed matches our recommended regional transportation objectives and our region-wide priorities, and we oppose any effort that would eliminate or alter any part of TB Next. Not only would that deprive Tampa Bay residents of much-needed improvements to I-275, but it could cost FDOT hundreds of millions of dollars in funding dedicated to the corridor and reduce business competitiveness compared to other peer regions across the country. Striking the build alternative could jeopardize our region's efforts to secure additional funding for the West Shore Interchange, another area obviously in need of immediate improvement, and it will adversely impact the proposed regional bus rapid transit project. Again, TBARTA supports the recommended build alternative associated with I-275 from MLK Boulevard north to Bierce Avenue. Our region's economic vitality, emergency evacuation plans, and overall quality of life depend upon the well-reasoned infrastructure improvements proposed by FDOT. Thank you.
Thank you. Our sixth speaker, number 6, is Willis Lohr.
Good evening. My name is Chad Lohr. I've lived here in Tampa Bay, both in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties for 18 plus years now. I'm the president for PNC Bank for the west coast of Florida as well as Central Florida. Here in the Tampa Bay area, we employ close to 275, including just shy of 90 in our downtown Tampa corporate office. First, I do want to express my appreciation to each of you for your public service. We look to you as our leaders to make important decisions that will improve our community. Obviously, tonight is one of those. Let me say right up front that I hope you support the safety and operational improvements that FDOT has proposed for Interstate 275 north of downtown interchange. Many of my employees make their daily commute along this corridor, and nothing's more important to me than them. Also serving as officer of the Tampa Bay Partnership and co-chaired its transportation working group for the last 2 years. The partnership has actively been engaged with transportation for the last 4 years. Primarily, we work to support a regional transit project job that will link our county-based systems and connect Tampa Bay residents to jobs and expanded economic opportunities. We've also supported other projects that include important local foundation for an effective regional transit system. Just last year, the Tampa Bay Partnership was one of the 5 founding contributors to All for Transportation, to pass the penny tax to fund transportation improvement in Hillsborough County. We supported this referendum because it proposed a balanced approach. 45% of the proceeds would go for transit, while we know 55 or 54% would go for other transportation infrastructure, including local roads, intersections, pedestrian and bicycle safety. The voters spoke. They are painfully aware that we face critical transportation challenges, and those challenges will only get worse as we believe hundreds of thousands of new residents will be coming over the next many years. They want our leaders to solve this problem, and the proposal tonight is one of the solutions. These same voters recently responded to an Interstate 275 survey reflecting a supporting view of this proposal. The downtown interchange is the primary connecting point for the nation's 18th largest metropolitan area. I presume we all agree it's dysfunctional, unsafe, and in need of repair. FDOT has proposed a plan, all within the existing right-of-way, to improve access to and from I-4, create 4-lane continuity all the way to Bears Avenue, and erect sound walls in strategic locations. A positive vote this evening will move the proposal forward to continue public comment and more detailed planning design. On behalf of the partnership, I ask you to support this reasonable and incremental plan. Thanks again for your service and giving me the opportunity to address you this evening.
Our seventh speaker is Rick Fernandez. He has some people that have yielded their time. Connie Rose? You yield your time? Okay. Yes, I do. Robert Marley? Here. Okay, sir. James Shirk? Here. Arian Daldevilla? Okay. Mr. Fernandez, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening to you all. This is like old home week. Having been here with you since, 2015 when TBX originally rolled out. I'm sorry? Rick Fernandez, 2906 North Elmore, Tampa, 33602.
Let me stop the clock a minute. Those who are coming forth after Mr. You don't need to give your address anymore.
Thank you. All right. I'm out of Tampa Heights, as I think all of you know. I've been here several times over the course of the last 4 years. I chair the Tampa Heights Transportation Committee, and I stand here representing the Civic Association with full authority of the board, many of whom are here with me today. First of all, I want to thank those folks that were so kind as to cede their time to me. Bob, Jim, Connie, David, I hope I do you honor and don't embarrass you guys. I really do appreciate the trust. Also, I have several Facebook comments that I posted prior to the meeting. I want to incorporate those by reference. I hope some of you have had a chance to read them. First, I want to start by stating for the record exactly what I'm asking you to do, and then I'm going to spend the rest of my time explaining why it makes sense for you as fiduciaries to do it. First, let's define the terms, TBX, Tampa Bay Next. Tampa Bay Next doesn't exist in my vocabulary any longer. There was a time when I thought that meant something, but it really doesn't. I'm in the Wayback Machine today. This is 2016 again. It feels like 2016, and the only thing missing are the TBX Yes buttons from the Tampa Bay partnership. So let's just call a spade a spade. That's where we are. My request for you is that you strike the remaining remnants of TBX from the tip. This year I'm asking also to extend that net just a little further into the South County. The line items that we're talking about are line items that you've heard from the CAC report, compliments of our chair. Line item 27 and 28, line items 40 and 44. 27 is the interstate north of Martin Luther King. 28 is the downtown interchange with the operational improvements that have been recently added. 40 and 44 are PD&E study requests that are down in the South County that were actually proposed at the CAC by my colleague there, Vivian Handy, who is the appointee of Commissioner Smith. I'm not going to address that any further because, frankly, I don't know the geography down there. But to the extent that Commissioner Smith has something to say at the appropriate time, I'm sure she will. And I understand Ms. Handy has submitted an email comment to the board, so I'll defer there. There's also an amendment request in front of you for the long-range transportation plan. I'm asking you to eliminate the language regarding the second part of that amendment and to substitute, eliminate the express toll lanes that are currently stated in the plan. If you adopt that language instead of the language that is currently reflected in your notice, you will be eliminating all reference to the PD&E Section 7 preferred alternative. And let me connect the dots for you as to why that's significant. If you happen to be inclined to remove line item 27 from the tip, line item 27 from the tip is the preferred alternative of that PD&E study. And I'll talk about that more later. But if you want to remove Section 7 from the tip, the PD&E, the additional lanes going north and south, you're also going to want to remove that language from your long-range transportation plan amendment. The two are absolutely integrated. Now, I'll just make that point with your staffs. I'm sure they have picked that nuance up, but it could be missed, and I want to make sure it doesn't slip through the cracks for you. So that's a surgical alteration on the LRTP, but very important. And I will add, again, as our chair said from the CAC, all items just mentioned have been vetted by your CAC and have all been recommended in exactly the terms that I have suggested. Now, why does it make sense for you to do what I have asked? Why would you stop this plan? And I actually approached it a different way. If you were going to lunch tomorrow with excuse me, I'm having a Marco Rubio moment. Hopefully I did that better than he did, but in any event. If you were going to lunch with a constituent tomorrow and you were going to explain to that constituent why it is you had voted to stop this highway expansion project, what would you say? What are your safe harbors? I mean, as a lawyer, I would advise a client, if you're going to make a decision like this, make sure that you have a good reason. You're going to hang your hat on some things that make sense. And when I put together the list, quite frankly, I would be standing here in front of you for an hour. Obviously, I can't do that. So I've got a 35,000-foot type of flyover here. And I'm just going to quickly touch on some of the highlight points, the keywords and phrases, the principles, if you will, that you could support that action on. The first, the obvious, is induced demand. We've been kicking that around since 2015. I think everybody in this room understands it, probably as well as Jeff Speck does at this point. I hope you do. And that's what's the head scratcher for me, quite frankly. If you understand induced demand, if you understand that you can't build your way out of congestion, if you understand that adding 2 lanes to a road, that's just going to bring more cars, more congestion, and more pollution. If you understand all of that, then you also understand that if you support FDOT's proposal to you regarding all of these exchanges, that you are essentially supporting a strategy which is all but guaranteed to fail. And fail after you've exchanged buckets of money to do it. Now, as a fiduciary, that seems like a difficult place to be to me. But if you don't accept induced demand, go forward, be happy. But induced demand is a pretty solid principle in the literature and the thought leadership in this arena. And if you don't accept it, I mean, I'd have to ask why. Now, line item 27, there's some other issues there that are, I think, particularly problematic beyond induced demand. One is procedural. The other is a question of ignoring the impacts on the community. The procedural failure, we have been waiting now for 2 years for a PD&E study to be completed on this section. That PD&E study was supposed to birth a preferred alternative. That PD&E study is still ongoing. It is not finished, all right? But somehow, incomplete as it is, it has managed to birth a preferred alternative that has matured miraculously to the point where it has been included in your tip. Now, only in FDOT world does this type of stuff happen. I mean, this is immaculate conception kind of stuff. Now, how do you get that darn thing in the tip when the study isn't finished? I'm suggesting that you need to pull it back out of the tip, put it back in the womb, and let the gestation period complete itself, whenever that is, later this year, as it was originally intended to be the case. So not only do we have a premature study, a premature alternative that's been produced, but we also have a community that's been presented with this alternative at a public hearing on March the 26th up in Seminole Heights. Some of you were there. There were about 300 people there that night. They absolutely rejected this preferred alternative that David Gwynn is talking about and all these nice folks from Tampa Bay Partnership are talking about. They weren't at that meeting. Well, David Gwynn was. He was hosting it. But I don't think he liked the results because he hasn't talked about it since. But those 300 people came. They provided public comment. They told everyone in the room that cared to listen, we don't want this, we want the no-build option. It was real clear, if you were in the room, where that community was. But that has absolutely been ignored ever since. I find that just unacceptable under so many conditions and so many terms. Now let's talk for just a moment, because even at 15 minutes, I'm going to run afoul of the time. There's a certain level of fear-mongering that goes on around Section 7. The evacuation routes, excuse me, but no. If you talk to a disaster management individual, they'll tell you, you want to run from the water and you want to hide from the wind. You don't necessarily evacuate. If you're going to be going anywhere outside of your area, you want to talk about tens of miles, not hundreds. The best practice is not to get on the interstate and clog the interstate to go to Georgia. But somehow evacuation routes have become one of the major selling points for this corridor expansion, and frankly, it just is not supportable. The boulevard, we are not living in the urban corridor in caves with sledgehammers waiting to go out at night to start hammering I-275 and knock it down. We know full well that the boulevard concept is a visionary one. I probably won't live to see it. I'm 64. If I live to see it, I'm going to be a little old man with a walker. We've got a lot of other things to do between now and then, like build a real transit system before that could ever happen. That real transit system will then merge in with something that could be a spine, a deal, just an absolute visionary type of move. Even for Tampa, 30 years from now, I suspect that would be a visionary move. So please, let's stop talking about how we're going to tear down 275 and how people in Wesley Chapel are going to have a bad commute. That just isn't, that dog is not going to hunt. Now, I'm sorry, again, line item 28, real quickly. The problem that I have, that our community has with line item 28, is that it hasn't been fully baked. Everything you read in the tip under that narrative was sprung on us at the CAC on May the 15th. It's the first time we'd seen it, and it's also the meeting that we were called in to judge the tip. That was the very meeting when we were supposed to review it. Sarah did her presentation then, just like she did for you, and we were looking at those line items for the very first time. We weren't happy about that. The director will tell you we weren't happy about that. They haven't been studied. They haven't been shared with the community through public workshops. There's been no liaison with the city. We don't know what those changes or suggestions mean. And I would suggest to you again, as a fiduciary, if you were going to lunch with your constituent and they asked you to explain, let's say your constituent lives in Ybor City and maybe around 13th, 14th, or 15th Street, and he or she asks you, what does that do to me? I challenge you to tell your constituent what that's going to do to you or do to her. They don't know. I mean, this is spaghetti on a wall right now. It isn't baked. FDOT needs to go back to neutral corner, come back in a few months with something maybe that makes some sense that has actually been vetted. That's not what we have here. I would suggest it either be struck, as the CAC recommended, or that there be an elimination of the narrative that exists currently, and instead you substitute the words operational and safety improvements to be determined after study, public workshops, and hearings. That would be an entry consistent with what we saw for Section 7 in the tip last year that simply referred to a PD&E. It's under study, let's call it what it is. That is the status. Let's remember that holding the line against highway expansion is not doing nothing. We still are moving forward with the Howard Franklin Bridge. We're still moving forward with West Shore. I don't think you're going to hear anybody here from the urban core neighborhood saying we should not be moving forward with Section 4 of the old TBX. We will be moving forward, hopefully, with development of a robust transit system. What folks need to understand is that in the urban core, we're making decisions and looking at things from the living room and the dining room. In the West Shore area, they're looking at things from the boardroom. The distinctions are very, very stark. We understand in West Shore they have certain needs. Home rule? Fine, Godspeed. You're happy with what FDOT is offering you, go for it. But we would like to have that reciprocal respect. And so far, over the last 4 years, we have not seen that. Rather, what we get is lambasted in the Times, propagandized against, and frankly, lies being espoused. And that just isn't going to, that's why I said TBX Next is over. I'm running out of steam. There's one quote here that I wanted to drop in before I left. I do not support the Tampa Bay Next plan because it will cut through neighborhoods that we all care about, including my own neighborhood. In this case, it's Seminole Heights. That quote is Jane Castor, February 2019. She and every mayoral candidate in this last election cycle was asked the same question. Every mayoral candidate opposed expansion of the interstates through this corridor. It does tell you the trend and where we're going. Hopefully, we are in a different day. Let's leave Tampa better than we found it. Doubling down on interstate infrastructure is not the path. Yet again, we're in your hands. Please strike 27, 28, 40, 44 from the tip and make the surgical alteration I suggested to your long-range transportation plan. Thank you.
Now, you just added 30 more seconds to your time. Now, if you're going to continue to applaud, we're going to have to stop and add 30 more seconds to your time. I would advise you, please do not do that. Let's move along, okay? Andy Mates, number 8.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Andy Mates. I serve on the Executive Committee and co-chair of the Policy Committee for the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce. Our Executive Committee recently reaffirmed the Chamber's support for Tampa Bay Next and the recommended build alternative associated with 275 north of MLK to Bears. This project fits squarely into our 10-year vision plan, and its support is shared by many of our regional partners like the Downtown Partnership, West Shore Alliance, Tampa Bay Partnership, and the North Tampa Bay Chamber. Specifically, why are we asking you to approve the recommendations? First, it's a regional corridor. We've heard folks from St. Pete tonight. The improvements are consistent with the regional transportation plans and are a priority of the Transportation Management Area Leadership Group. I'm glad to see representation from our chambers in the North Tampa Bay area here this evening, a part of our region that would be greatly impacted by these decisions. As a regional corridor, we must make improvements that address safety issues and congestion. These improvements are needed to accommodate evacuation issues, population and employment growth, and most importantly, safety. In addition to moving people around safely, we must also invest in moving our goods and commerce safely and efficiently. These improvements are an investment in our key commerce drivers. We need a balanced approach. We need a balanced approach to solving our transportation problem, and that's exactly what this project does. It makes much needed operational safety improvements and allows for transit flexibility in the future. I'd like to thank Secretary Gwynn and FDOT for their agility throughout this process. They've listened to the community, they brought forward a balanced approach, and the transportation improvements in Tampa Bay Next are key to our region's business success. I strongly encourage each of you to vote in favor to approve the Section 7 recommended build alternative from MLK to Bears. Lines 27, 28 need to stay in, and please approve the Transportation Improvement Program. Thank you very much for your time.
Our number 9 speaker is Marlon Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Marlon Anderson. I live in South Tampa. I just want to say that we have this overall influx of new citizens coming in, something like 650,000 that are going to be coming in over the coming years. And if we have such a huge influx, we need to think about infrastructure for these new residents, right? And a big part of that infrastructure is the roads, right? And so that means adding roads and expanding roads. I've lived in Florida almost all my life, and this is the story of Florida. We widen the roads. This is what we do. Okay, and I have seen success from that. For example, they widened the I-275 between the Howard Franklin Bridge and downtown. It is, the traffic flows much better. It's much safer now with the exits and entrances that they've added in, with longer and exit pass and all that type of thing. And as well, this has been going on for years. They widened I-4 from 2 lanes to 3 lanes in each direction. Humongous improvement in the flow of traffic between Tampa and Orlando. Okay, so I know that widening roads works. All right, so now let's take a look at I-275. Okay, so I-275, if you go during the rush hour, going north like at 5 o'clock, it's a parking lot. Okay, it's just, it needs to be widened. And then furthermore, I-275, as we've already talked about, some of the other speakers, is the major evacuation route, not only for most of Tampa, but for most of Pinellas County, from St. Pete all the way up to Clearwater. They depend upon I-275. So it's a regional concept. So these various things, I know that they sort of walk back the idea of tearing down I-275 tonight, but it sounds like they'd still like to tear down I-275, which I think is frankly ridiculous. And I think that if the majority of the population of this region knew that these people wanted to do that, which they don't, by the way, they would say, what on earth are you thinking? Why would you even have a concept like that? All right, and then so I support that part, which is the widening of the lanes from MLK up to Barris. Now, the interchange, I'll give you my own unique experience. I don't do this very often because I live in South Tampa, but for some reason I was going south on I-275, and I had to take the connector, the exit ramp that took you over east on I-4. That's 1 lane, right? I wasn't ready for this. I had to come to a complete stop on the interstate. You guys probably know what I'm talking about if you've ever done this. And you're sitting there in the interstate, you're not off on the ramp, you're on the interstate at a complete stop. And then meanwhile, these people are going by you 60 miles an hour on your left, right next to you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that's my story.
Thank you. Let me give advice. The timer you have there, when the yellow light comes on, it means you have 30 seconds. The red light means your time is up. Forgot to tell you that, okay? Our 10th speaker is Brent Peterson.
Good evening, board members. My name is Brant Peterson. I currently serve as the engagement chair for the 2019 Catalyst Committee of the Emerging Leaders of Tampa Bay. As a young professional born and raised in Tampa, I support a balanced approach to transportation. I would like to see our region strive to provide a multiplicity of choice. This includes an emphasis on transit, of course, but this also means preserving and improving the mobility options we currently depend on. This includes making improvements to our interstate network throughout the region. I understand the need to work with FDOT on solutions we can implement now, investing in our current infrastructure and preparing for growth while planning for a more holistic approach as we build the future of this great region. I echo Secretary Gwen's comments, and I support the improvements to the downtown interchange and 275 north of MLK, and encourage their inclusion in the TIP and long-range transportation plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 11, Ron Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ron Weaver. Please don't let this $300 million we desperately need for these 2 additional lanes of I-275 North to go to other jurisdictions. I feel like there are a watch party streaming this like a Toronto Raptors game where they're watching in Orlando and Jacksonville and Miami to see if we drop the ball again on this $300 million we desperately need to ease our congestion, to end some of those 1,500 crashes in this neighborhood, to assure hurricane evacuation. All of these reasons, we mustn't drop this ball again as we did the $600 million we dropped 2 or 3 years ago and let it go to other jurisdictions and their watch parties. I honestly believe at this point in time that this is an A-plus compromise for 6 reasons. Number one, it doesn't involve 50 or 150 or 200 pieces of property to be taken. It involves 6 that are in the midst of pieces that have already been taken by DOT in order to achieve the necessary fix of this interchange, taking it from 2 lanes through I-4 to 3 lanes through I-4, 2 lanes instead of 1 lane for the southbound movement of I-275 to go to Orlando. These are huge and desperately needed improvements. We must keep in this surgery 27 and 28. Please don't take the heart of mobility out. Please don't engage in the surgery of taking out 27 and 28 as the heart of our mobility for our future. Our children are dependent upon this. 220,000 public school students and 100,000 college students, many of this use this, not just for health care and all the necessities of this community. This is the heart of our community. This is the spine of our community, and we need to relieve its congestion. We need to relieve those 1,500 crashes, as many of them as humanly possible. We need to reduce the pollution by reducing the congestion. We need to bear in mind that $1.3 billion of West Shore area funding is also being looked at the same time with this kind of decisiveness. So you need to make a decision, please, that includes this Section 7, as it is already affecting with the federal eyes some of the $1.3 billion that is involved in the West Shore interchange. In sum, it's an A-plus compromise. It does not involve very many additional acres with respect to the right-of-way. It therefore uses virtually existing right-of-way. It does not involve tolls. It is therefore, I believe, answered the questions. If I were a marriage counselor, I would encourage the DOT and those beloved neighborhoods to please kiss and make up. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick, number 12, Rick Bennett.
I'd like to thank all of you for allowing public comment. My name is Rick Bennett. I'm a resident of Seminole Heights, and I've lived there since 2004 at 33604. I can hear 275 from my porch, and on a winter day when there's no, when the leaves have fallen a slight bit, or maybe early spring, I can see 275 from my porch. You know, I just tell you, I take it every day. I work in West Shore, and I'm not paid to be here either. I'm here representing my family of 5, 2 children that are at Hillsborough High School IB program, and 1 that I take to Rowan Park. So for me, it's more kind of personal than trying to convince you of anything. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm telling you that this compromise is much better than what I saw last time. I'm also telling you that, you know, I was not really satisfied with what it was, but now I'm finding this to be something that I'm much more interested in. But there's 4 considerations that I just want to say personally. The first one is safety is number 1. And what I can tell you now, whenever I've looked every day, I have to get into the far left-hand lane when I'm driving to downtown because of what's happening in the 3 lanes of people trying to force their way in front of each other to get on I-4. And that's unacceptable, and that has to be dealt with. And if nothing else is done, that is as important as anything else that we can do as a community, is improve safety right there. Because I've seen too many wrecks, and I am scared to death that 2 of my children, who are 16 and 17, will be one of those wrecks. And I do not want to see that happen. Second, I'm glad that this expansion is taking into account the community and the footprint. And I just want to tell you that please always make sure that we don't split up this neighborhood any more than it has. And I'm not here to litigate the past. I'm just saying in the future. Also, these extra 2 lanes, not being toll lanes, I think is very important. I would love to see them as HOV lanes and for public transit only. And just to, yes, we can't make sure that people do that, but 60% of us are probably going to follow the rules because that's what we do. But I would just encourage that happen, and maybe even carve outs for hybrids and electric cars like they have in South Florida. And lastly, number 4, I live really close to Florida Avenue. And what I want to see is less people on Florida Avenue. I want to see that with wider sidewalks, more people walking, more public transportation, and also less cars. Because that is the future of our neighborhood, and that's the future of this city, is that neighborhood. And we need to make sure that that is taken into consideration, what's happening in those neighborhoods locally. Because I want to see Florida Avenue as a local road and not a cut-through because traffic is too bad on 275. Again, I want to thank you for your time, and I just you know, ask you to vote as you see fit, but just tell you that I do support what's going on tonight. Thank you.
Number 13, Jim Davidson.
Good evening, Board. This is my second MPO meeting today. I was up at the Pasco County MPO this morning, and Hillsborough County and the City of Tampa did not fare very well this morning. I'm here today, and they're all here today, because this Board hasn't done its job. I'm not getting paid tonight either. In fact, I haven't gotten a dime for the 26 years I've been coming here. There was a director, several directors before Beth, Lucy Ayers, and she said, we need everything. We need transit, we need roads. The gentleman that talked to you from Seminole Heights was about as incorrect as you can be. I was on your Emergency Medical Planning Council, and I don't know of anyone that says you hunker down in an evacuation area during a hurricane. And there will be 1 million people from Pinellas County trying to get out of there in case there's a hurricane, not including South Tampa and MacDill Air Force Base and the rest of them. This should have been done 4 years ago. If you let this slide back now, and that's all this is, I don't believe they're going to tear down I-275. They just want to delay it so you don't widen it. They talked about transit and how transit's going to cure everything, and they talked about induced demand, how it's going to be a failed road. They didn't tell you about the triple convergence, did they? You might not even know what the triple convergence is. That's why transit can't fix congestion. That's Jarrett Walker. You can read it. It's in his book. Do you know what Jarrett Walker would do here? He would make those an express lane because he said that's the only way, short of destroying the economy, to control congestion. Some of you are fans of Jarrett Walker, one of the leading transit experts in the country, maybe in the world. If you don't pass this tonight, you are going to let down millions of people, not just in Hillsborough County, but in the surrounding area. For once, stand up, make a decision. If you can't make it tonight, then have the Board of County Commissioners put it on the referendum in 2020. Then there will be this won't happen anymore. You will know there will be a mandate. But reach a decision, make a decision, please. Make the right decision and put this stuff that Secretary Gwynn asked for you in it so that lives can be saved. Thank you very much. Jim Davison.
Number 14, Kim DeBoser.
Chairman Miller, MPO board members, my name is Kim DeBosier. I serve on the executive committee of the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce and I co-chair the Chamber's Policy Council with Andy Mates, who spoke earlier. I'm not being paid to be here. I also served on the MPO board for 4 years, so I know what you're going through. But on behalf of the Chamber's 1,400 plus members, many of who submitted public comment prior to tonight, I'm here to express our strong support for the Section 7 recommended build alternative associated with I-275 from north of MLK to north of Bears Avenue, lines 27, 28, 29 in the tip. We oppose any effort to strike the build alternative or any TB Next projects from the tip for the following reasons. Removing TB Next projects from the tip could cost FDOT District 7 $300 million that is dedicated to the critical operational improvements that we've been talking about tonight along the corridor. Additionally, striking the build alternative could negatively impact our efforts, the region's efforts to secure $1 billion in funding needed for the West Shore Interchange, a top priority for the region. As you've heard, we're the 9th fastest growing region in the country, the 10th fastest growing county in the nation. We cannot delay the needed investment in a stretch of corridor on I-275. So you've heard the number 1,500 crashes in 2016. That's over 4 crashes a day. I mean, this is morning, noon, and night every day. And in a county that welcomed 27,000 new residents last year, implementing these safety improvements now must be a priority. These improvements would not require right-of-way acquisition on the ramps or along cross streets, except near Barris for some stormwater improvements, which brings me to my next point. FDOT has compromised over the last few years and continues to work with and compromise with the neighborhoods. First, they have eliminated the express lane proposals that are no longer considering those options, and they've worked to ensure that the operational safety improvements in the near term have minimal neighborhood impact. The transportation improvements in TB Next are critical to Tampa Bay's economic vitality and the safety of our residents. As part of the business community in Tampa Bay, I again express my support for the recommended build alternative associated with I-275 north of MLK to north of Barris, lines 27, 28, 29 in the tip. Thank you for this opportunity and for your service to the community.
Number 15, Tim Keyports.
Good evening, Board. My name is Tim Keyports. I'm the president of the Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association. Our association is the largest in the city and is currently bisected by I-275. Our board recently reconfirmed our commitment to the no-build option on I-275 between the downtown interchange to Bears. Our neighborhood, as most of you know, is in the process of revitalization with new businesses and many new homeowners investing in our area. We need an improved and safer transit system in our area to support this expanding growth. Therefore, I respectfully ask that you remove items 27 and 28 of the tip at tonight's meeting. Additionally, I serve as the vice president of the Heights Urban Core Chamber. This chamber represents many small businesses within the urban core just north of downtown to north of the Hillsborough River. These small business owners need improvements to the arterial roads focused on safety for their patrons and their employees, to include crosswalks, sidewalks, and last mile options like bike and scooter rentals. Funds wasted on the highway expansion now could be better utilized on transit and complete streets, as well as the Vision Zero project that this board has signed on for. That would allow the public to then further patronize these businesses. It's well past time to finish the Heights Mobility Study and make the recommended improvements. We have improved downtown, and now it's time to bring your focus north. Please vote to remove line items 27 and 28 from the tip.
Number 16, Josh Baumgartner.
Chairman Miller and board members, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Josh Baumgartner, Senior Vice President of Advocacy at the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce. I'm here on behalf of our chair, Jamie Harden, and our CEO, Bob Rohrlach, who send their regards. They are traveling this evening. I'm going to do my best to spare you the redundancy that you've already heard from the chamber. I share the comments from our policy and executive committee members, Andy Mates and Kim DeBosier. I share the comments from Secretary Gwynn as well. In short, we strongly support the proposed operational improvements because it aligns with our transportation principles for a balanced multimodal approach, not an either-or scenario. Safety improvements, regional connectivity, you've heard those reasons, but I want to talk a little bit about how we reached this support. It was not done in a vacuum. Rather, we reached this support after vetting this project through our policy committees, transportation committees, our executive committee, and our board of directors, many of which are made up of businesses, small, medium, and large. Some of those small businesses use their living rooms as boardrooms and their dining rooms as boardrooms, as you heard earlier. We want to continue to thank FDOT for their efforts to compromise and address concerns during this process. And I also want to thank you for your time this evening and consideration, and ask for you to support options A and B on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Number 17, Doreen Jessup.
My name is Doreen Jessup. Hello. We all hate traffic. Those of us who attend these meetings again and again to speak out against TBX, now Tampa Bay Next, recognize that we have a serious traffic problem, and we are serious about solving it. So serious that we have spent countless of our own unpaid hours researching solutions by requesting public records, reading reports, analyzing data, consulting experts, and sharing what we find. Were there any good evidence that more freeway lanes would solve our traffic issues, you might be able to justify the consequential destruction to large swaths of Tampa. But all of the available objective evidence indicates that freeway expansion does little to alleviate congestion and much to suppress economic growth. Which raises the question of why FDOT is pursuing this outdated, ineffective, and absurdly expensive project. Safety is not the reason. One explanation is that the long arm of corruption is reaching into the pockets of taxpayers to line the pockets of builders who fund the campaigns of politicians in Tallahassee. Because I know that all members of the MPO want to do what is best for the citizens of Hillsborough County, I ask that you vote to remove items 27 and 28 from the Transportation Improvement Plan and help us to forge a plan that will succeed. To the recently elected officials who won our enthusiastic support by vowing to oppose this project, we are counting on you now. And we are counting your each and every vote. Thank you.
Doug Jessup. And we have 4 people that have yielded their time to Mr. Jessup. Linda Hertak. Lynn Hertak. Linda Yeko. William Brannon. Ann Thompson. Okay. Mr. Jessup, you have 15 minutes.
I won't need all of it, but thank you very much. My name is Doug Jessup. I am a professor at USF. I hold a PhD from Princeton University, and my interests include logic and decision theory. I am here to urge that you accept the recommendation of your CAC and remove items 27 and 28 from the tip. I have examined the analysis that underlies FDOT's plans for interstate expansion, and I will show you that it is worthless. To begin, we should ask what interstate expansion is supposed to accomplish. In the draft tip, items 27.8 are expansion projects listed under the rubric Major Investments for Economic Growth. But do urban interstates promote economic growth? The evidence on this point is unequivocal. Interstates in urban areas create dead zones and yield no net economic benefit. Consider, for instance, the Lower Manhattan Expressway that was proposed in the 1960s. Had this monstrosity been constructed, what is now some of the most valuable property on the planet would be worthless, and New York City would be much poorer. The project was canceled, but not because highway engineers suddenly learned a bit of economics. Public outrage of the kind you see on display this evening ultimately doomed that project, even as self-interested business associations and construction firms lobbied for it. This is one example, but the point holds quite generally. Unless you ignore the empirical evidence and embrace flat earth economics, you must take it as a matter of established fact that urban freeways do not promote growth. In light of this fact, one might ask, how could anyone claim that urban interstates yield benefits that outweigh their costs? I have examined FDOT's analysis, and frankly, I have never seen a more dishonest and incompetent attempt at cost-benefit analysis. Literally, the only cost considered is the dollar price of building and maintaining an interstate. FDOT's analysis purposely overlooks the enormous long-term costs associated with turning otherwise useful property into a concrete moonscape and ramming traffic through it. Further, FDOT refuses to consider the opportunity cost of urban interstates. On the benefit side of their analysis, reduced travel times and less frequent crashes are cited. But here, the numbers simply don't add up. Research has conclusively shown that adding capacity to heavily traveled interstates does nothing to reduce travel times or minimize crashes. So that part of the analysis is absolute garbage. It's just induced demand again. Even worse, FDOT ignores the increased travel times that interstates impose on residents who must navigate around them. So they call it a benefit if someone might save 5 minutes getting to the beach on a weekend, but they see no cost involved in forcing people to spend extra time getting back and forth to Publix. To top it off, the known delays associated with years of construction are not counted as costs, even as mythical time savings from expansion are deemed benefits. Putting the matter metaphorically, FDOT has placed a dog turd on your plate and told you that it is fine chocolate. Don't eat it. Now, FDOT's absurd cost-benefit analysis warrants removal of items 27 and 28 all on its own. But things get even worse in the principal justification for their plans. I refer to the Tampa Bay Interstate Study, which was current in 1995, but whose conclusions and recommendations live on. Things have changed quite a bit in the last 25 plus years, but FDOT hasn't noticed. In particular, there has been enormous growth in South Tampa, downtown, Ybor, Tampa Heights, and Seminole Heights. Demand for residential property in these neighborhoods is strong, but the Tampa Bay Interstate Study is built on the explicit assumption that nobody seeks to live in these areas. Instead, the study focuses exclusively on suburban growth, and its central priority is the expansion of interstate capacity for the benefit of sprawling suburbs, regardless of the costs imposed on urban residents. It is simply irrational for an agency to rely on this grossly outdated study whose key assumptions have been overtaken by the facts and invalidated by changing circumstances. Worse still, the Tampa Interstate Study contains numerous outright lies and manifest absurdities. To cite one instance, the study declares that, quote, expansion of the interstate system will not adversely affect community cohesion. The initial construction of the interstates severed many neighborhoods. However, these areas have been reestablished as cohesive neighborhoods, close quote. There are no polite words in the English language that adequately convey just how mendacious and despicable that judgment is. Perhaps even more horrifying is the study's conclusion that the interstate system should be truly seen as an amenity. The plan imagines that the interstate will be, quote, a welcome, inseparable component of the neighborhoods which it traverses, offering them opportunities to enhance their identity rather than walling them off, close quote. I don't know what level of psychopharmacological assistance one needs in order to make that claim seem plausible. But we can agree that no rational person could approve an interstate scheme that is based on such nonsense. If you want to approve items 27 and 28, make FDOT go back, redo this outdated study, and come back with something that doesn't stink. The only conclusion warranted here is that FDOT is actively seeking to deceive the public and this MPO into approving projects whose primary beneficiaries would be construction firms hired to tear up the city. The voters of Hillsborough County have spoken, and they want alternatives to the interstate. By any reasonable measure, the Tampa interstate system is a failure. Thus, rather than dumping further resources into that failure, you must demand no build or no further action where the interstates are concerned. Now, given the facts and evidence, there remains a puzzle, namely explaining why some local business leaders support the expansion of urban interstates. The Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce and the Tampa Bay Partnership supported the TBX boondoggle, and they continue to act as cheerleaders for its absurd successor, Tampa Bay Next, as we've heard this evening. I assume that these organizations' leadership consists of intelligent people who understand cost-benefit analysis and whose grasp of economics goes well beyond the rudimentary level. I also expect that these people would agree that the Lower Manhattan Expressway was a bad idea and that New York City is better off for not having 12 lanes of interstate running from the Holland Tunnel to the Brooklyn Bridge. Why then do they think that large segments of Tampa deserve to be paved over? Several explanations come to mind. First, these leaders have taken FDOT at its word. Not having done a critical assessment of the 1957 Highway Master Plan, or the Tampa Interstate Study, or the Tampa Express Master Plan, they trust that FDOT would only propose a massive project if there was good reason to think that it would be of general benefit. Alas, the record shows that that assumption is demonstrably false. Second, these leaders are engaged in fallacious reasoning from sunk costs. Such reasoning holds that the interstates are here as an unalterable fact of life. Many billions have already been spent on the system. And although it is currently a failure, we must try to make it a success by expanding it. Otherwise, those prior expenditures are a waste, and people won't give us any more money. I've actually heard people make this argument, but any decision theorist will tell you that it is irrational. Throwing good money after bad is not a sustainable strategy. Doubling down on failure is not the path to success. And at some point, we must all face the facts. The key fact in this case is clear. There is nothing to be gained by continuing to dump money into a failed interstate system. It's time to sweep up the shattered pieces of that ruined freeway dream and move on to something else, something with a chance of actually working. Finally, I fear that when local business leaders learn that a state agency is prepared to drop 9 or 10-figure sums into the local economy, they don't really care what project those expenditures are intended to support. They reckon that kind of money is bound to stimulate the economy one way or another. If the state were to appropriate $500 million for the construction of the world's largest skate park here in Tampa, I am sure that the Chamber and the partnership would praise this as a visionary plan and to declare it to be a critical investment needed to bring Tampa to the next level, as they are so fond of saying. If you don't believe me, ask them how they feel about a baseball stadium in Ybor. However, this sort of logic doesn't generally work. Some expenditures are worse than nothing. The Berlin Wall and I-275 both fall into that category. I close by noting that proponents of local interstate expansion often make two seemingly contradictory claims in support of their goal of paving over the city. On the one hand, they tell us that hundreds of thousands of new residents will arrive in the next decade, so we must expand interstate capacity to accommodate them. On the other hand, they warn that the region struggles to attract educated young talent, so we must expand interstate capacity to entice them into relocating here. Interstate expansion therefore serves as the solution to every problem. Lots of people are moving here, but they're not the ones we really want, so we should build more interstates to handle the population influx, all while hoping to attract an entirely different demographic. Now, purely for the sake of argument, I'm willing to concede that the region's population will grow significantly in 10 years' time, and that Tampa must do better in attracting and retaining well-educated young people into its economy. But expanding interstates does nothing to address either issue. If people move here in large numbers, they will have to make choices about where to live. Those who decide to buy property in remote suburbs and commute long distances understand that they will have to put up with sitting in traffic. Although, for the record, we currently rank well behind the national average for driving time spent in congestion for cities of this size. And of course, we know, induced demand and all this, we know that adding interstate capacity will do nothing to reduce their driving time. In contrast, those who move here choosing to live and work in the city won't need to worry about the interstate, so there's no problem on that score. Either way, an interstate build-out is pretty much irrelevant to the issue of increasing local population. But what about the goal of attracting talented young people? Will they be lured to Tampa by mile upon mile of shiny new interstate lanes? The available evidence answers that question with an emphatic no. To illustrate this point, I ask you to recall the embarrassing failure that was Tampa's bid to land Amazon's HQ2. From that episode, we learned that this region stands out for two things. One, we have the nation's saddest excuse for a transit system. And two, we boast a stratospheric level of cyclist pedestrian fatalities. Both of those distinctions were deal breakers for Amazon. The region's pitiful effort at corporate recruitment shows quite clearly that no company in search of an educated young workforce will give Tampa the time of day until it gets its transit act together and gets over its long, unhappy romance with the automobile. In other words, adding capacity to this interstate system will not attract well-educated young people we claim to seek. On the contrary, it will drive them away. To sum up the case, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me, but the following facts are beyond rational dispute. First, building or expanding urban interstates provides no net economic benefit. Second, adding lanes to Tampa's interstates will not reduce travel times or minimize crashes. Third, those who imagine that interstate expansion will bring benefits outweighing its enormous costs are engaged in wishful thinking and flat earth economics. The choice is therefore clear. Put yourselves on the right side of this fight and remove items 27 and 28 from the tip. The region stands in dire need of alternatives to the interstate, and that is where our efforts should be directed. I thank you very much for your time.
Number 18, Eddie Birch.
Good evening, Eddie Birch. I live in the Citrus Park, Carrollwood area, and I work with the Tampa Innovation Partnership, which is working to develop the Uptown University Area District. And speaking tonight to support the improving the amendments, including number 27 and 28, concerning the proposed improvements to I-275 Section 6. This is a vital corridor to the Uptown area and the regional assets of USF, the James A. Haley VA Hospital, Moffitt Cancer Center, and Busch Gardens. And congestion is currently a barrier to the development of this area. that is addressed by these proposed improvements. Even as the more options we have, the better off we are as a region. The more options we have to get around, the better we'll be. I think we all agree to that. But even as we improve and increase other options like BRT, like bike paths, like even rail, I-275 needs to remain a viable part of that portfolio of options to get around. The proposed improvements will enhance safety by reducing that need to weave and merge in and out of lanes, will increase capacity, it could support future transit through using the shoulder for possible BRT in the future. And also the underpass improvements to widen sidewalks, improve safety and aesthetics with lighting and landscaping opportunities are a good inclusion in the plan. And the plan does not include the express toll lanes and also takes very minimal right-of-way, as you've heard, in the I-4 section of the interchange. And the boulevard concept is a creative and innovative idea worthy of study for a future option, but not instead of the proposed plan for the present day. Thank you.
Number 20, Shane Regal.
Hey there, Shane Regal. I'm speaking as a resident who lives 300 feet away from the flyover that's proposed to have an extra lane added to it. And with that extra lane comes extra capacity and safety. I want to go back because there seems to be a little bit of a conversation that's happening regarding confusion. Confusion around everyone that's here that's speaking against adding capacity for safety improvements. Things that we all want to tear down the interstate, that this is related to making a bigger footprint. No, us saying don't touch the thing is in response to this gaslighting that's been placed on us by FDOT.
Mr. Regal, hold on a second. Did you have someone yield
Yes,
time
sir.
to you?
My husband.
Okay. All right. He has 2:24. Make that now 5:24. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
24 seconds.
Basically, this is us saying that we don't want to keep on picking the scab is in response to the gaslighting that's been happening with FDOT. First, they come and they say, we're going to blow up the interstate. What color flowers do you want on the side of the hills? And then we say, you know what? We don't want you to blow it up. You know, just don't do that. Don't do that. And then they say, oh, no. They're express lanes. We're blowing it up with express lanes now. We're like, we don't want express lanes. And then they say, oh, no. We're getting rid of express lanes. Now we're just going to keep the lanes. And you know what? We've just gotten to the point where we're saying, leave it alone. It's a scar. Every couple of years we come around and we pick at it. And it's going to stick around there until we figure out what's better. When this plan was proposed, I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old. And things have changed a lot since when I was 10 years old. I work in advertising, and I know how to sell stuff. And yes, I understand that saying that hurricane preparedness, and I understand that selling that the suburbs is going to take a long time to get across Tampa is an easy way to sell it to the largest part of the population, but it ignores the fact that people are living here. I understand. I mean, I used to work in downtown, and I lived in Carrollwood for a while there. And that spot at Malfunction Junction, that point of the most frustrating part of somebody's day is also somebody's house. And that's something we have to think about. I understand that it's frustrating, the 6 minutes, the 15 minutes that people are sitting in their car 5 days a week on their way home, or a couple of minutes on the way to work. But I live there. I spend a majority of my time there. And when we're talking about what the current capacity already looks like, it's almost like FDOT couldn't help themselves with safety and improvements and capacity. It's like it had to be, it was almost accidental. It slipped in there. But with that, what does current capacity look like? Current capacity looks like changing out your air filters in your home every 3 weeks, cleaning your pet's ears because of the pollution that gets in them and they get ear infections, increased rate of asthma. People who live along the interstate right there have the highest rates of asthma in the county, and we're talking about adding capacity and safety. Is it safe, the fact that I need to make sure that I take inventory every day I leave to make sure I have this thing around with me? So I want everybody to know that when the neighborhood is saying enough's enough, we don't have to take on additional right-of-way. FDOT already has it. They don't have to take extra parcels if they already own it. So what the neighborhoods are saying is leave it alone, leave it well enough alone. We're at an inflection point. People are working at home more. And then the same way that we're looking at development inside the county, let's look at the same way as we're moving transit. If people want to move here, we want the type of people that want to take mass transit. Just the same way as we don't want people to all start to want to live in neighborhoods in the middle of Ruskin. We don't want to have induced neighborhoods that are having to worry about putting out extra schools and extra fire. We want to make sure that we're managing the population, and we need to make sure that we're managing the transportation as well. And so I just want to kind of talk about a couple of priorities here. We're basically running into a situation where it's neighborhood by neighborhood. FDOT rolls it out. We're going to pin Ybor against Seminole Heights, against Tampa Heights, and one of them is going to win. The interstate's going to expand into one of those three neighborhoods. Let's pin them against each other. Then they all rally together. And then we're going to pin the business community against the neighborhoods. And one of them's going to win. And we have millions of dollars going against people worrying about interstate that is going to be running against their homes. Again, I am 5 houses away from the interstate, right at that on-ramp. And I understand that it backs up and it's slow. What we're asking for is safety improvement without added capacity. And basically what you have in front of you right now says added capacity. We want no extra lanes to go through the urban core. It's already happened enough. They have not shown good faith to the neighborhoods and the communities, and it's not going to be long until they want to do the same thing out in county. It sounds great now, but it's going to happen somewhere else. So please strike 27 and 28. It does not make sense. The neighborhoods don't want it, and they're going to be the most impacted by it. Thank you.
Number 21, Hope Allen.
Good evening. I am Hope Allen, President and CEO of the North Tampa Bay Chamber, as well as a Hillsborough County resident. I stand before you today to encourage you to approve priority number 27 in the TIP, the $300 million in proposed improvements to I-275 north to downtown. We have come in support of this project before and continue to ask for your support for this vital piece of our transportation network. In addition, we support item number 28, the safety and operational improvements from the downtown interchange. The amended plan is basic, incremental improvements made within the existing footprint. We believe the amended long-term range plan includes FDOT's preferred option along I-275 is a very balanced, thoughtful, and reasonable approach, and encourage the FDOT to seek funding for additional elements of the Tampa Bay Next program, including the consideration of future express lanes to the West Shore interchange and downtown interchange areas. Please embrace this opportunity for funding for the crucial connection for our workforce, movement of goods and services, and the safety of the entire region and our visiting guests. Please vote yes to the LRTP amendment and approve the draft TIP that includes these improvements for regional interstate projects. Thank you.
Number 22, Wyatt Crape.
Good evening, MPO Board. My name is Wyatt Kraft, and I currently serve as the chair of the Catalyst Committee for the Emerging Leaders of Tampa Bay, which is a young professional leadership program affiliated with the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce. I've had the pleasure of attending these TIP annual update meetings over the past few years now, so I'd like to say I'm a longtime listener and first-time caller. I'm kind of a math nerd, so I'll kick it off with a few numbers to support my position. Hillsborough County is the 10th fastest growing county in the United States of America. The population has grown from 1 million residents in 2000 to nearly 1.5 million today. It's a 50% increase in 20 years. On top of that, Hillsborough County welcomes over 22 million tourists each year. Where there's people, there's a need to get around. Given the region's impressive growth, an effective transportation plan is one of the most critical issues facing Tampa today. I'm sorry, but no pressure, guys. and gals. Understanding this reality, the best solution appears to be a multi-pronged approach that combines expanding existing highway capacity with the introduction of new mass transit systems. Given the extensive lead time for rail and other mass transit solutions, we need to act today by prioritizing highway improvements in the tip so the extra 27,000 residents who move here each year have a faster way to get around. We support investment in existing and emerging long-term mass transit options to accommodate Tampa's future growth, and we support pursuing a bus rapid transit system that will reduce highway congestion today and provide an alternative to cars. We are living in a unique and special time in Tampa's history. After multiple attempts, 57% of the voters last November approved a transportation referendum that will generate an additional $280 million annually to help solve Hillsborough County's transportation challenges. In the same year, record tourism numbers have elevated Hillsborough as one of only 9 counties in the state with the high impact designation, which will allow it to grow even further. If there was ever an opportunity to plan for the future by investing today, this is it. I'm 28 years old, so when I think about these transportation issues, it's not a matter of years, but decades. By 2040, peak hour traffic on the I-275 I-4 interchange will reach more than double its intended capacity during peak hours. If we don't take action today to prioritize these items in the tip, traffic congestion will begin to erode our quality of life, limit economic opportunity, and impact the lives of the next generation. And that is why the young professionals in this room are so concerned and hopeful that the MPO board will make the prudent decision of supporting transportation solutions that will address Tampa's growth both today and throughout our lifetimes. Thank you.
Number 23, Lindsay Eggsware.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindsay Eggsware, and I'm a returning Hillsborough County resident. I grew up in New Tampa, and I'm a proud product of the Hillsborough County school system. Upon earning my bachelor's degree from Florida State, I decided to move back to Tampa for the many opportunities it would offer me to begin my professional career. I highly encourage you to vote yes on improving access to and from I-4, creating lane continuity between MLK to Bears Avenue, as well as widening highway shoulders for transit use. This will significantly improve traffic and roadway conditions and ultimately make lives easier, safer, and smoother for commuters. As a returning resident of New Tampa, this improvement would positively impact my commute to Orlando, as well as other areas of Tampa that I travel to often. Thank you for your time.
Number 24, Eric Lawson. Eric Larson.
Good evening, board members. Eric Larson on behalf of the Tampa Innovation Alliance. You heard my colleague speak earlier, and we're delighted to be here. We're delighted to take part in a great democratic process, and I understand the horns of the dilemma that you face tonight. I also understand my neighbors in Seminole Heights. I live just a little bit to the west of that area, and for at least 3 years, I rode transit when I worked in this building right here to see, make it work. But looking at the plan tonight, we come to encourage you to keep number 27 and number 28 in the long-range transportation plan, in the TIP. And there are a couple of great reasons for this. You've heard the arguments tonight, and we wish to make one more in regards to that. A few weeks ago, we had the privilege of being at City Council as we watched them approve a brand new hotel and apartment complex at Bush Boulevard and 275. 125 units, apartments, and 127 hotel rooms. Maybe I got that switched. We're also looking at the Grand Prix racetrack that just filed a rezoning plan for workforce housing. That's going to add more to our 275. We also have plans filed by the Yingling family for a hotel, a conference center, welcome center. So, and just a week ago, we set before the county commission here, as you approved, an agreement between USF and the University of South Florida to create an IAE, Institute of Applied Engineering, at the mall. And I wish I could talk about many of the exciting plans going on at the mall. that area has been designated an opportunity zone. There is going to be major development. There is going to be major money poured into this area. They say overall that area around the university has about a $4 billion impact. And I say, for shame, it should have 4 times that amount. We lack transportation. We lack safe roads. We lack many of the things that get there. I understand that, 275 is there. We're not going to go backwards. It's already been built. I hope that we can minimize the impacts on our neighborhoods, but it is a major connector that's going to connect our downtown, our airport, going to connect us with Pinellas County and regions north. Thank you tonight for your consideration. We ask that you keep that number 2728 in the TIF, or in the plan.
Number 25, Chantel Lester.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to try to keep it short, and I'm not as well spoken as everyone else who's probably spoken tonight, but my family and I have been, Chantel Lester. My family and I have been residents for Old Seminole Heights for 33 years, with 3 generations in the Sulphur Spring and downtown Tampa area, with the Rood and Licata families. We have just signed another mortgage to include new renovations to our 1922 home. And we live on Central with one more house, and then we have the interstate. And it is true, if you sit inside, you can hear the interstate. In fact, there's motorcycles that go by almost every single night, and you can hear them through the windows. And I have to wash off the front porch regularly because of the amount of pollution that's on the front porch. This is our forever home. We've just invested in it, and I want to remain here, and I am excited about the growth that is happening in our area. We attend church downtown. My husband and I are musicians full-time, and we use the interstate regularly, as we do often most of our work in Pinellas County. And safety is a concern. But what FDOT is proposing is rosy. But I think it's utopian, and I think we need more options. We need to finish the, the study. The study needs to be completed. We need to redistribute the pressure on the highways, not add to it. Alternate transportation should be the first option, not the last, and it can be done now. Choices made for our growth must include choices that improve quality of life. Thank you.
We're now 1/4 the way through with our speakers. Number 26, Rachel Canopy or Canapé.
Thank you for your service to our community and for the opportunity to voice my concerns tonight. My name is Rachel Knipe, and I am the 2019 Chair of Emerging Leaders of Tampa Bay. We are the region's largest young professional organization with 440 members. While we could not all be here tonight, you've already heard from several of our members in public comment, and many more have written in. Contrary to what you may have heard tonight, this is not about trimming 5 minutes off my commute to the beach. This is about empowering me and my peers to work and to do business regionally, safely, and efficiently, while creating opportunities for mass transit solutions like BRT. As a generation who will bear the brunt of the decisions made in this chamber for the longest duration of our working lives, if we choose to stay in Hillsborough, many of you have already seen your young relatives flee Hillsborough County in pursuit of more, better infrastructure, better mobility, access to public transit, improved safety, the list goes on. We've seen extensive and prolonged studies on the issue of improvements on the 275 corridor and the West Shore interchange, and we've surveyed an 80% public approval rate. And in the meantime, we continue to see 1,500 accidents per year on the stretch of 275, representing a huge public safety concern. Worsening commute times, and missed opportunities to invest in agile and economical public transportation that our generation so urgently requires. Tonight, I'm asking for your support for the necessary improvements to our infrastructure proposed by Imagine 2040 and TIP. Thank you very much.
Number 27, Kathy Brown.
Good evening, I'm Kathy Brown. I live in Valrico, and I'm not paid to be here either. And I have no financial interest in any type of transit or building this or building that. I'm totally against any plan to tear down any part of I-275 and the I-4 interchange. Instead, the interchange in Interstate North should be expanded and additional lanes with safety improvements. FDOT has had the plans to do this for over 20 years. It's clearly needed. We are in danger of losing FDOT funding for many years if their plans are rejected again. You must vote to keep this in the Transportation Improvement Plan. Your vote on this matter should be done in the interest of all residents in the area, including Pinellas County and all of Hillsborough County, not just the privileged, greedy few who want to force us into light rail. Tearing down any part of I-275 would sever the evacuation route for so many residents. When evacuation orders are given, hiding from the wind will not save you. You're still going to be stuck there in the peril of the storm surge. This is critical. Do you want to be responsible for all the lives that could be lost in a hurricane if you vote to destroy this route instead of to improve it? Please keep the FDOT I-275 expansion improvement projects in the TIP and in the long-range plans. Thank you.
Number 28, Dania Lazarus, and she has Sean Martin. Sean Martin, your time, okay, and Ingrid Smith.
Right here.
Okay, you have 9 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your attention. My name is Dana. My zip code is 33610. I believe my county rep is Mr. Miller. 3 years ago, I stood here in 2016 making a plea to take the TBX out of the TIP. At that time, in my public comment, I told you all that I was going to get my master's in urban and regional planning because I care so much about transportation planning. I think it's a very interesting topic. Transportation is the backbone of any good economy, any city. So I'm here today to tell you that this August, I will not only graduate with that degree, but also a graduate certificate in community development and another graduate certificate in sustainable transportation. I worked really hard. Oh, thanks. I am also currently the president of a new student organization called Student Advocates for Progressive Planning, or SAP. We're brand new. We're having our first meeting this week, but you'll probably be seeing a lot more of us because we will be advocating for policies that align with the things that we are learning in our textbooks every day. So this summer, I will be visiting the oh shoot, I'm reading the wrong one. My bad. I got it. We're having our first meeting. We're going to be back. So many times I'd be in class learning about protected bike lanes and transportation demand management and commuter rail that other cities of our size have, and just feeling so frustrated and confused about why we're so backwards and behind here in Hillsborough County. Through my studies, I've learned the reason why that we're so focused on roads. The automobile and the highway lobby were extremely successful when President Eisenhower passed the Interstate and Defense Act in 1956. They gave a major fiscal advantage to the automobile as a mode of transportation. Now, leaders back then didn't know what the consequences of that act would be, but we know now. It's over 50 years later, and we know that since 2017, the transport sector has been the top emitter of greenhouse gases. We know that the elderly, the very people who ushered in the age of the automobile, can't drive in their old age, and they need to be able to get around to meet their basic needs. We know now that induced demand is a thing. There are so many studies about this, you guys. So we, and I do mean you all, now know better than to think that roads and single occupant vehicles provide satisfactory mobility. They hurt our quality of life from the most impoverished communities to the most well-to-do. Everyone suffers from air pollution, traffic, and a lack of choices. So my master's thesis was actually on social equity in transportation planning right here in Hillsborough County, and I learned something very interesting. I learned that you, the MPO board, have the power, the same power very similar that Eisenhower had, to make the choices about how we spend our money. You make the choice about what gets built. You have been tasked with defending the needs of the people of this county, not the needs of the highway and automobile lobby. In most other developed countries, every mode of transportation has to compete for funding out of the general revenue budget at the federal level. Here in America, roads have their own funding sources and fewer barriers to construction. However, because it's easier to fund them, it's a very bad reason to keep building them. It just is. This summer, I will be visiting the Netherlands for my final class of my program to experience for myself what a 21st century transportation system looks and feels like. I am so excited to ride a light rail system all the way from the airport to the city of Delft, where I will be studying, all the way to Brussels, Belgium, which will take only 2 hours and 11 minutes to go 101 miles, 2 countries. I cannot wait to rent a bike for super cheap and with ease and ride it all over the city safely on fully protected bike lanes. I cannot wait to walk on safe pedestrian infrastructure to everything I need and want to do, from the dorm to the coffee shop to the grocery store to the park, the train station, and back. I am worried. I really am. And I moved back here specifically from Portland, Oregon, because this is my home. I'm a 5th generation Tampania, native of Tampa. This is my home. I really care about this place. I want to stay and make it better. I want to work my entire life to do that. I am afraid that I will be enticed by the quality of life in the Netherlands and not want to come back. So, something that FDOT's Ed McKinney recently said really struck a chord with me. I haven't been able to get it out of my head. Last month, I heard him say, FDOT central office has all of this money ready for us, but each time we stall them on accepting it, they get closer to saying, well, Tampa's just not ready, and giving the money to another district. I'm sure you've all heard this exact line from him. Tampa's just not ready. Well, let me tell you what Tampa is ready for. We are ready to stop dying in crashes on our roads at the highest rate in the nation. We are ready for protected and connected commuter bicycle infrastructure that will allow us to bike anywhere we need to go safely. We are ready for a bus system that we can hop on every 5 to 15 minutes anywhere in the county and get to anywhere else quickly and safely. We are ready to join every single other municipality our size by implementing a cross-county rail system. And we are ready to stop pretending like transportation funding spent on roads projects and road widening still makes sense. As you go to vote this evening, please keep in mind that the residents of Hillsborough County are ready for multimodal transportation. We are ready to step into the 21st century of mobility. Please remove line items 27, 28, and I'll say it, these as well, 40 and 44, because they also pertain to road widening, from the tip. You have the power to tell FDOT that we're ready for transit now. Thank you. But I received a comment from my friend who is a bus rider, and he asked me to read it. It's very short. His name is Francisco Pierre Lewis. He's a regular bus driver, rider. The bus is his primary mode of transportation. And he lives at the zip code 33612 up in the university area. I believe Lewis might be his representative. So He said, and I'm reading this verbatim, and he's about my age, by the way, and he rides the bus regularly. I am disappointed with the members of the MPO, this is what he's saying, that continue to think that expanding roads is a solution to congestion when the solution to the issue is having less cars on the road. It's pretty simple. The less cars on the road, the less congestion we have. Funds should be used to focus on alternative forms of transit like buses and better bike lanes. Being a new cyclist, I've experienced the joys of riding a bike. The experience is both electrifying and terrifying. Physical separation through barriers between the cyclist and the driver is a great way to prevent death. By expanding the bus system to become more accessible in places where there are little to no buses is the best way to have less cars on the road. I ride the bus during the week, and I find it extremely disappointing how slow and inaccessible buses are, especially during the weekend. I work during the weekend, and I can't start riding the bus for Route 33, that's the route he is, until Monday. People work, and they need reliable transportation. If you don't hear this, we need a 24-hour bus system. We need a bus system that is as fast on weekends as it is on the weekdays. Doing so would provide transportation to those who are the most deserving but don't have the means to get to their desired destination. Transportation is a right, not a privilege. Thank you, Francisco Pierre-Louis. So, thank you all.
Number 28, David Luce.
My name's David Luce. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here today. This is a difficult conversation that has passionate players on both sides. I myself do not believe a long-term solution to our transportation needs is defined with continuous interstate expansions, and personally would like to see more mobility options pursued. With that being said, I do believe we have come to a point where we are in danger of falling further behind in our ability to keep up with our growth and safety needs. Risk of losing funding and addressing safety concerns is the reason I am in support of moving forward with the recommended build alternative associated with 275. As an individual who has been in a severe accident in this corridor, I can tell you anxieties grow traveling down it. FDOT has been more than willing to work with the opposition to come to a suitable compromise, only to be turned away with insults, as we have seen here tonight. A no-build stance is not an option. Stagnation and malfunction is death to the city. The county overwhelmingly voted for transportation last year, and here we are debating if we will turn down more opportunities to help our transit needs. I believe it would be irresponsible and reckless to walk away from FDOT's proposed improvements. At what point do we finally move forward? At what point do we stop doing studies and put action to work? The overall community is in favor of alleviating pressure from 275, and we will have to address regional connectivity in the near future. This project can be a catalyst for other infrastructure mobility endeavors. We continue to play catch up, or we can begin to change for the future. In the end, this is a rational choice and option given with our growing population. With that, thank you for your time, and let's keep those scooters.
Number 30, Justin Rick. Number 30, Justin Rick. Oh, you left? Okay, all right. Number 31, Michelle Cookson. And she has 3 people, Ryan Statt, Alicia Getzoff, and Bridget Maroney. Okay, Ms. Cook, you have 12 minutes. And Ms. Cook is number 31.
Good evening. Thank you. Michelle Cookson. Just wanted to say I'm here because I live here, but since it's trending tonight, I thought I'd throw in I'm still not paid to be here either. I wanted to thank you all sincerely, and I especially wanted to thank the citizens that have turned out yet again, demonstrating their commitment to helping eliminate the pernicious cycle of endless highway expansion. Adding lanes to the interstate will only create more congestion due to induced demand. Traffic engineers know this and admit we cannot widen our way out of this. Induced demand is a self-fulfilling prophecy and a vicious cycle. Like so much of transportation planning, it is counterintuitive. But responding to increased congestion with adding more lanes only exacerbates and creates more congestion. You all know this, but we widen a road, you add lanes. Once those new lanes are open, more cars fill those lanes up. You suddenly find yourself right back where you started, clogged lanes. We have got to break this addiction. We can, and it starts here today with this vote. I wanted to share this video for you all. It discusses induced demand and actually shows how we can change.
This is the view from my office window. It's Seattle's Alaskan Way Viaduct. A few months ago, this double-decker freeway carried 90,000 cars over the city's downtown waterfront every day. Now, it carries 0 cars because they're tearing it down and replacing it with a tunnel. But for 3 weeks, we got a glance into what it's like to go without a big downtown freeway.
But could you do that forever? Just get rid of a freeway? To answer that, we're gonna take a road trip through history.
US freeway mania really kicked off during the 1950s, when President Eisenhower created the interstate highway system. But even he was shocked when he saw construction crews building the Capitol Beltway in DC.
Even he recognized how destructive freeways would be in cities.
Before long, people were using the freeways to drive everywhere. They were crowded, expensive, and bad for the environment. They cut through urban communities and fueled neighborhood segregation. And making them wider wasn't helping congestion. See, roads don't really follow the normal rules of the universe. Take this freeway. It has a traffic problem. And so the seemingly obvious solution would be to widen the road. But that original traffic was also acting as a kind of driving deterrent. New space would give people a reason to get back in their cars. This is a real phenomenon. It's called induced demand, a law of economics since 1962. So more lanes attract more drivers, and soon you wind up with the same traffic you started with, which brings us to our first stop in our Dead Freeway tour, Portland, Oregon. The freeway carried traffic along Portland's downtown riverfront, and the highway department had plans to expand it.
Some highway engineers have a mentality, engineeringly speaking, that would run an 8-lane freeway through the Taj Mahal.
That's Tom McCall. He was Oregon's Republican governor. He came up with a kind of crazy idea for the time. What if they tore down the freeway and replaced it with a park? And this was the nation's first big freeway removal. Oregon was building 2 interstates in the area, so this downtown freeway just wasn't that necessary anymore. And it didn't end up creating the traffic nightmare that some had predicted. It was basically the 1960s version of this.
Cars, man, why?
Next stop, San Francisco, the 90s. From the beginning, activists fought this freeway, which blocked off the city's iconic waterfront views. There was even this 1955 editorial in the San Francisco Chronicle that roasted Seattle's viaduct as a warning against the proposed freeway. Ugly structure dominates architectural features in its vicinity. Yeah, that's fair. The thing that finally sealed the freeway's fate was the big 1989 earthquake. It damaged the Embarcadero and several other freeways in the area. Suddenly, San Francisco was faced with a choice. If you want to keep the freeway, you'll have to pay to fix it. And that did the trick. In 1991, the Embarcadero freeway came down. In its place, a surface boulevard with big walkable sidewalks. The traffic impacts were pretty minimal. City streets absorbed some traffic, and without the freeway, some traffic just disappeared. The area around the Embarcadero became a waterfront destination. It saw higher property values, more economic activity, and more jobs. Some say the freeway removal added to the Bay Area's rapid gentrification. And while that area was expensive to start, housing prices did go up. For other places, there's a real lesson there. How to remove a freeway and make sure the people who live there can stick around for the benefit.
And so here we are, Seattle 2019. Here's a little background.
A 2001 earthquake damaged the viaduct. 18 years later, the city's tearing it down and replacing it with a tunnel, but not before the final challenge. Before the new tunnel could open, they had to close the old viaduct for 3 weeks. It was officially called the period of maximum constraint. Also,
Viadume, Carmageddon, there was a few other ones that I probably shouldn't mention.
So best case, people change their habits. Everyone who doesn't have to drive, doesn't drive. Worst case,
unreasonable congestion that nobody would tolerate. It'd take you hours to get into downtown.
So what happened? For the most part, people found other ways to get around.
We had about a 10% decrease in vehicles coming into downtown.
Here's a typical bike count in Seattle during this time of year. And here's what happened during the viaduct closure.
I never would have predicted it because January is generally not just cold, but rainy.
Transit ridership spiked too. And the light rail and commuter trains added more than 15,000 new riders. And finally, some of the trips just didn't happen.
And everybody goes, well, what happened to the trips? Well, it's not a finite amount of trips. People have brains and people make choices.
And then the tunnel opened, and things started to go back to normal. But those 3 weeks gave us a small window into how a city might respond to losing a freeway. Now, could Seattle have kept this up? It's hard to say.
But history suggests that cities can lose a little freeway and not lose their minds.
Thanks for watching. There's a lot of history out there that we didn't get to cover.
Hi, okay, thanks. So even though the work that we're hearing being presented about is being within the existing right-of-way, I just really wanted to say it does not change the fact that adding capacity will only generate further induced demand. It will perpetuate the very cycle of pollution, real estate value loss, and blight that the highway causes to the already negatively impacted historic neighborhoods. When we hear voices here today ganging up on our county and talking about regional transportation, why aren't they advocating for the opportunity inherent in buying the CSX lines and running regional commuter rail? That infrastructure is in place, the right-of-way is there, it gives us opportunity for TOD, and we have a local match. I mean, Orlando got it, Miami got it, and they didn't even have matching funds in place when they did. FDOT should commit to that. Basically, you all know this. I don't want to repeat things I've said earlier, but we do know it's a new day. We've got a dedicated funding stream now, and that language specifically forbids spending on highway widening. The citizens of Hillsborough County voted overwhelmingly to fund that tax, and those votes were in every precinct, county-wide, not just in the urban core. FDOT should commit to, at minimum, a dollar-for-dollar match on our AFT funds, not focus on telling Hillsborough County how we need to spend our transportation improvements. We've committed to raising $300 million. That's 45% of it earmarked for transit. Those are the projects we have clearly, consistently said should be the priority. I reject the accusation being thrown at the citizens that we're only talking about an either-or scenario. It's false and inaccurate. We have always stressed a scenario that says and. Fix our existing roads that are very dangerous and don't meet Vision Zero standards, and expand and grow our bus system, and modernize and extend the streetcar and buy the CSX lines, build regional commuter networks there, and connect and protect by building greenways, trails, sidewalks for pedestrians and cyclists, and stop wasting precious funds, plowing them into an 11-mile stretch that's reaching the end of its life cycle, when that instead could be transformed into a game-changing travel corridor featuring high-capacity transit that still accommodates car travel and frees up 35 acres of redevelopment with the Boulevard project. The city of Tampa, again, stands to lose the most with interstate expansion. We are at a very important, absolutely crucial turning point. We must reject this self-fulfilling prophecy of endless highway expansion that only leads to clogged failure, and instead turn toward our future and rapidly implement transit, many systems in transportation modes in a connected network that will accommodate our future growth in a more sustainable and equitable way, and one that actually represents better return on investment. We are in a dire need for a massive paradigm shift. On behalf of the other 2,000 members of my coalition, I'm imploring you, please, make a motion to remove line items 27 and 28, and also to remove line items 40 and 44 from the tip. The LRTP amendment should only reflect, removing the express lanes language, not being encoded with adding 4 other lanes. Please vote with the citizens, your constituents, your neighbors, the people who live here. Thank you.
Before we call on the next speaker, if there's anyone for facilities that is listening, it's getting warm in here. It's getting warm. I know I'm old, I'm not having a hot flash, I'm hot. Please crank up the air, please. Number 32, Sam Becker.
Good evening, Board. My name is Sam Becker, and I'm a planning student at USF. I'm also here with Dana, representing our student organization, Student Advocates for Progressive Planning. I'm here advocating for the removal of line items 27 and line item 28, along here with other members of the community requesting that TBX, TV Next, or whatever else it's rebranded as, be taken off the tip. Instead, FDOT should invest in the future of transportation in this community and region. That future includes expanding bus service, BRT, transit-oriented development, light rail, and expanding the streetcar. I find it very short-sighted to approve major funding for a highway widening project when the demand for multimodal transportation is growing throughout Tampa, and when the voters show that they're ready for different modes of transportation. All these things before even mentioning the environmental impacts, public health concerns, noise pollution, the headaches that come with construction. I'm here with this community supporting the no build, no further action option as we share and strive towards a more transit-going culture in Tampa Bay. Thank you for having me.
Number 33, Gerald Dicus.
Hi, I'm Gerald Dicus from Riverview. The problem with this whole thing is in 10 years, transportation and cars are going to be totally different from what they are now. I mean, cars have reached peak car and that. So there's much, much better ways, much less cost than expanding the interstate. I mean, I was here back in the 60s when they built the damn thing, and my friends all got thrown out, evicted from their condemned property, and destroyed the huge, beautiful neighborhoods that were down there right by Tampa and that. And there's just no need for it. Now, instead of 27 and 28, we could take Nebraska Avenue, divide it into 2 bus lanes, 1 each way, and 4 small vehicle, slow vehicle lanes. You can fit small vehicles like neighborhood electric vehicles and other vehicles 2 to a lane wide, and that you can fit so many more people going to and from at lower speeds and much more dense and that than you can on the interstate, which is going to turn into a parking lot. And we've all seen it. Every time you build bigger roads, they get filled. So we need a different way to do it. Now, if we take roads like Nebraska and put them for bicycles, electric mopeds, e-bikes, golf carts, neighborhood electric vehicles, and other innovative, low cost to buy, and my personal one that I ride every day costs $1 a day. And with the 80-mile range, electric 80-mile range, I go anywhere in the county without a problem, and barely slower than a car. And the thing is, if you have an e-moped, a moped is actually the fastest vehicle on the road during rush hour because it bypasses every person there. All the cars on the right, only one light stack each time you hit a light instead of waiting 4, or so, like it is at rush hour and that. The thing is you're going to lower the pollution drastically. You're going to give people a very viable, we already have, 20,000 golf carts and NEVs here? I mean, people in Sun City would love to be able to take theirs to a doctor and that. They get, by the way, golf carts have about 60 to 100 mile range, just so you know, and that. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Todd Josh, number 34, Todd Josko. Todd Josko. Okay. Number 35, Holly Simmons.
Before I begin, if the chair would allow, I do have some visual examples that I provided in a letter to the MPO board last week. I wanted to pass them out to show you what area I'm talking about, because it's not the area you've talked about at all tonight. So,
Give them to the clerk over here,
that's
please.
okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, good evening. My name is Holly Simmons, and I'm Vice President of the Dana Shore Civic Association and a member of Hillsborough BPAC. I'm here tonight representing various communities throughout Upper Tampa Bay, including Dana Shores, Pelican Island, Sweetwater Creek, Baycrest Park, Colony at Bayport, and Tampa Bay Youth Football League. We submitted that letter last Friday, and we greatly appreciate the work of the MPO and the many projects that benefit the Tampa Bay area, including several projects included in the current tip affecting the Courtney Campbell Causeway and George Road. However, we believe that more can be done with transportation to make our area safe. The area that we are concerned with is the stretch from Veterans Expressway to Hillsborough Avenue, including Memorial Highway, Independence Parkway, George Road, and Dana Shores Drive, which is used for cut-through traffic at speeds regularly over 70 miles an hour in a 35 zone. Due to the intersection at Memorial or Sheldon and Hillsborough, traffic backs up on weekday afternoons between 5 and 6 p.m. all the way to Veterans Expressway and sometimes even onto the exit ramp at Independence Parkway. There are 2 current transportation projects in the works for our area. One project in TIP to make George Road a complete street, connecting the Courtney Campbell Causeway Trail with the Upper Tampa Bay Trail, as well as the West Shore Interchange reconfiguration as part of Tampa Bay Next. The 2016 study of George Road recommends to address many safety concerns on George Road, which we are very much in favor of and want to echo our support with. However, it does not address the other issues on Memorial, Independence, and Dana Shores Drive, which could greatly jeopardize the very bicyclist and pedestrian safety that this project so hopes to enhance. Additionally, FDOT's proposal for the reconfiguration of West Shore currently has express lanes planned with egress onto Independence Parkway, further exacerbating the traffic issues that we currently have today. There's no cut-through or no egress from the Veterans Expressway express lanes onto Hillsborough Avenue. So we're going to have all that traffic that we already have on Memorial to Hillsborough Avenue compounded even further. So with that, we have several solutions that we've proposed in the letter and are outlined in the visuals I gave to you just now. We really ask that you review these to be added as either an additional part of the scope when that George Road Complete Streets project comes up, or to address it as an additional item on the tip, especially the re-engineering of the Hillsborough and Memorial intersection that we all agree with through every community in that Upper Tampa Bay area. Additionally, we ask you to consider, or ask FDOT to consider, adding an egress for the express lanes onto Hillsborough Avenue to redirect traffic away from residential areas into that more commercial area instead, and try to alleviate some of that congestion in our community. So with that, thank you so much for all that you do. We really appreciate it, and I hope it's been a breath of fresh air to hear something different.
Thank you. Number 36, Ann Klug.
Two in a row talking about West Shore. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time. I'm just Ann Kulig with the Executive Director of the West Shore Alliance, also a resident of Hillsborough County. I'm just here on behalf of our board and our board president, Julie Harris-Hurden, who could not be here tonight. You all should have received a letter from us last week encouraging you to support the TIP. As you know, our #1 priority is the West Shore interchange. There's close to 100,000 people that work in West Shore, 20 million visitors a year going in and out of Tampa International Airport, Raymond James Stadium, another 15,000 residents, 20+ thousand students at HCC. So it's a really diverse area. It is a business district, but it's also a neighborhood, and it's also a huge destination and a gateway to the city for visitors to Tampa. We have fully supported the West Shore interchange and have worked with FDOT over the years. They've accepted lots of our suggestions, ideas, made changes that are going to help the street network in West Shore. But we also encourage you to support the other items in the tip. You know, with 90+ thousand people working in the district, with the number of visitors in the district, they view the interstate system as a critical piece of our regional network. That's just the reality. I know you here are concerned both with Hillsborough County, but the interstate is a regional system. We encourage you to support the improvements that are on the tip tonight. And we are especially pleased to see that transit is a component of pretty much everything FDOT is now talking about for the interstate system and their rights of way. You know, we've known for a long time, and that since this started, that there was going to be transit right-of-way preserved as part of the interstate. And that's one of the key reasons we have supported the improvements to this. We know we can't build our way out of congestion, but there's immediate needs before we can get to the robust transit system that we all hope we can have. And with the All for Transportation dollars, you know, I hope next year we're spending a lot of time at this TIP public hearing fighting for transportation projects in our districts and transit projects in our district that we never dreamed we'd be able to get before. So I thank you for your time tonight. I know you have a tough decision and a long evening, so I will end it with that. Thank you very much.
Number 37, Mauricio Rosas and Martha Clark, your time, and Jean Cawthorn, your time. Okay. Mr. Ross, you have 9 minutes.
Somebody
give me a couple minutes and then
No, I made it.
What?
I made an announcement.
Oh, okay. Yes, Mauricio Rosas. I'm here now for the past couple of years, I think. I've been working with OSHNA as well as the Heights Transit Traffic Awareness Campaign, Vision Zero, Beth Alden, Gina Torres. We've been working closely together because last year over 168 people were killed on local roads. This year the number is already in the 50s, 60s number on local roads. Florida Avenue, Hillsborough Avenue, Nebraska Avenue, all of those roads need to be prioritized. I will say that FDOT has made some inroads. We've got some stuff coming into Seminole Heights. That's a very good thing. And that's something that I encourage you to continue to move forward with. Lastly, as part of what I'm speaking, I want you to pay attention to the Flexibility in Highway Design book that says specifically that Congress passed a law, ISTEA, in 1991. In addition to safety, it emphasized the importance of good design that is sensitive to its surrounding environment, especially in historic and scenic areas. So we need to continue to push for preservation and better local roads. And on that note, we'll play a video. For several years, residents of the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County have attended countless meetings, charrettes, public hearings, and over we have been saying, Transit Now Tampa Bay.
Everybody got used to it. Okay, I like this. Yeah. Let's do light rail from here, from there, from there. Now you're 20 years behind.
Yeah, and we put a lot of work.
20 years behind
we put a lot of work into designing all that.
Hey, 20 years behind because of hate. That's what it adds up. Add up to hate.
I can't call
hate somebody. Well, I can't. I don't work for
because I'm.
Hey, I can also say climate change. Climate change.
Everybody in our table in unison pretty much agreed that mitigation first was a policy that we all really kind of agreed with. And by mitigation first, I don't mean let's build this thing and we're going to give you these other options. By mitigation first, I mean let's build these options and do something innovative and not do something that's 20 years old. Let's set the plan for the future, not the plan for yesterday.
Everyone repeats these, and you'll see it from the next two teams coming down too. everybody goes back to the protected bike lanes, the protected sidewalks, the community streets, the walkable streets. Those are things that make neighborhoods work.
Putting the streetcar back on Central, improved bus service, more bike routes, improving the walkability. There are sidewalks missing in some parts of the neighborhood. On Florida, it's 3 feet wide, and typically there's traffic here and a fence or a building here, so it's just frightening to walk there.
We would like solar sound walls, and at the base of that, additional parking, and ideally that would run basically the length of Seminole Heights. And like I said earlier, we have a lot of parking issues right now that is hindering our commercial area. And by tying that into a little intermodal to our other mobility options, maybe we have like the coast shares as well as the underpasses. It would help people to get around, and we can encourage folks to come and visit Seminole Heights without hindering the residents that already live here.
Continuity, so making sure that we have continued service. It doesn't just drop off outside of our neighborhood. We want to be able to go to all the great places and the great services the city has to offer. And when you have a bike lane that just ends at, you know, the intersection of Tampa and MLK, and then you can't ride your bike anymore, what do? You're stuck. So continuity is a big factor right there. I think that one other theme is a sense of neighborhood. Complete streets is a common one on a lot of the main streets in this neighborhood. Safety for pedestrians. Vision Zero is a great goal and a great initiative that I strongly believe
Vision Zero is about neighborhood empowerment to effect change to reduce traffic fatalities to zero. We do this by direct neighborhood action and bringing attention to problem areas. But we must do more. We must do more to protect those who are waiting at bus stops. We must do more to stop the cycle of senseless crashing into homes, these terrible accidents on neighborhood roads. At some point, we need to reach Vision Zero.
Tell me, so your house was smacked into.
Yes.
And this is your house over there.
Correct.
So I know there's going to be some upgrades here, but is there a sidewalk plan?
You know what? There was at one point talk about a sidewalk running all the way down to Idlewild, all the way down to Publix, and I don't know why that fell apart. We got these new sidewalks, which are fantastic, but at some point they're also kind of like sidewalks to nowhere.
Okay.
Right? To where you can't really finish anywhere other than going out to Hannah. And that's just not a place where people are walking. People are walking.
And here's exactly the kind of person we're saying is going too fast. Well, that was a bad interruption there.
Absolutely.
Dr. Scambati, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Mauricio. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So tell me first a little bit about what you do.
What I do. So I'm trained as a physician, actually in hematology and medical oncology, but I spent 10 years at the National Institutes of Health, which a lot of what is done there is research on what causes diseases. I got very interested in my career about what are the larger things that affect human health, right? I'd be treating one patient at a time. And so I started actually doing environmental work because I got very interested in the interrelationship of the environment to human health and how we can protect the environment and protect health.
If I may. The highway itself, I mean, it's made out of asphalt. Does that also add to the pollution?
Right. So, so the reality is highways and streets have greatly expanded the way we live in terms of the way we get around in cars and cities and economic prosperity. But highways such as asphalt or even concrete roads are something that we call impervious surfaces, right? And so before there were impervious surfaces here in Tampa, this was all just soil and trees.
Right.
And one of the reasons it's important to talk about impervious surfaces because for the most part, all the rainwater that's falling on that asphalt and falling on our roads is getting channeled. Some is getting channeled into stormwater ponds. So we call that stormwater because it's rain that falls off. It picks up a ton of pollutants, it picks up a ton of heat, and most of it is channeled directly into our waterways. I want to go back to your thing about Tampa is not a major city.
Right.
But one of the things we're looking at is Tampa's growth, right? Over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Correct.
And the growth estimates are projecting here, right?
Right.
So
So I don't think we necessarily have to have this kind of noise level. What we have to be willing to do, though, if we want to buffer some of the noise level, is think about growing or developing the city in a different way. Or what I call kind of how I call it restorative redevelopment. So that as we redevelop, and personally I'm a big believer in some vegetated buffers, could we do more vegetated buffers around roadways and highways?
Road. Induced demand suggests all you're going to do is invite more traffic, and you're going to be right back at congestion again. So please, listen to us. The behavior that's been exhibited by the people in this room is the behavior that should be enabled, not the sprawled behavior that's been enabled in the past by the policies and the development that we followed in this community previously. Finally, I love this the best. Tear the damn thing out and put a boulevard in.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm not paid to be here, but Mayo is paid handsomely to come to all of these meetings. Thank you for your time.
Number 38, Jesky Bergman.
Good night, good afternoon. I came here with some notes. Oh, sorry, Jitske Bergman, 33604, across the river. I came here with a bunch of notes. I had them nicely written out. I have heard all of them repeated many times, so I have now scribbled all over this thing, and I sincerely hope I can make myself understandable. Number one, I came here from Stewart, thinking that I would be moving into a city with transportation, because I was pushing my 60s, and I thought, now I need to look somewhere where I have some transportation in case my body fails me. As you noticed, my knees are now going. I had a cataract operation because I couldn't see the streets anymore, and I was beginning to look at the transportation around here. All well and good. Things came, I started with taking a bus to the library. This was just wonderful because it was right up my street. It also goes, it does the North Boulevard Library. It does Chambers High School for all those kids that come in there, and then it goes to some other schools, middle school and whatever. Next thing, I got a little familiar with that, and that bus was stopped. Now it goes to Home Depot. Somewhere, somebody was listening to me, and now it does go by the library again. So I'm very, very happy, and I think maybe we have somebody to thank here for that. Our new mayor, Jane Castor, said it's going to be difficult getting people onto a bus and using transportation. The culture isn't here. This is very true. The first time I took a bus, I must say, everybody was just absolutely wonderful. I took a bus, I parked the car at Publix, and I took the bus from there downtown to here, and the first bus passed me by, me and 5 other people. Why? Because I went behind, I stood behind the line of the 5 other people, and I said, what happened to this bus that whooshed by? This very kind gentleman who had offered me a seat on the benches to begin with said, oh, the bus driver knows us. We live here. Your next bus, ma'am, will be here in 14 minutes. And I said, oh my God. This is the culture probably that Jane was talking about. The next bus comes, and they pushed me to the front of the line, and they waved to the bus, and they, you know, all kinds of motions, and the bus stopped. Whoops! Okay, very fine. Now you've heard a different story.
Thank you.
I came here by bus, and sort of the same thing happened.
Number 39, William Hunter, Terry Limley. Okay. You have 6 minutes, Ms. Tumley.
Thank you. I don't think I'll need it all, but thanks for the time. I have 2 points I wanted to bring forth, but the video, my name, William Hunter. The video that Michelle Cookson showed earlier makes me think that maybe converting 275 to a boulevard isn't such a nutty idea. To my prepared remarks, I strongly support an emphasis and focus in our planning on the development of transit. And I say development on purpose because what we currently have as transit is pitiful and embarrassing when compared to other cities of our size. We need to change that. A gentleman earlier said that Florida builds roads. It's what we do. And sadly, he's right. I was born in Florida, and I'm nearly 75. I've lived here my entire life except for a little less than 2 years when I was in the U.S. Army. And I've seen us build roads and build roads and build roads. Now, we need a certain number of roads. You can't argue that. That's true. But we see where we've reached a point where that's no longer really serving us. It's no longer improving our life, our quality of life. It is in some ways hindering us. So I think we need to place emphasis on another area, because if we continue to build roads, we'll continue to damage a state which I think is not as beautiful as it used to be. The other thing I want to mention is there was a letter on the op-ed page of Monday's Tampa Bay Times. It was from Rick Homans, President and CEO of the Tampa Bay Partnership, and the first sentence of the article was, and I quote, 94% of Hillsborough County residents view the section of I-275 north of downtown Tampa as a critical connection to jobs and opportunities, according to a recent scientific poll conducted by Florida Opinion Research and commissioned by the Tampa Bay Partnership, end quote. 94%. I admit I was a little skeptical of that. I doubted that they had polled the entire population of the county. I did a little research and found an online article by Creative Loafing dated June 7th, in which they evaluated this study. They found that the study talked to 401 adult residents of the county. 65% of those people had never heard of the project. So even if they voiced an opinion in support of it, that opinion could hardly be a thoughtful and reasoned opinion. I was curious about that number, and I took a look at population. The latest figure I could find for the population of the county was 2017, when there were 1.409 million people in the county. 401 people is 0.000285%, approximately 3/10,000ths of the population. So that survey is hardly a valid sample. I have no problem with someone differing from my own opinion, but I do have a problem with someone publishing hugely misleading information. Thank you.
Number 40, Scott Miller. Scott Miller. Okay. Number 41, Chris Villa. And Jordan Miller. Your time. Okay. Valerie McDonald. Your time. Gloria Jean Roster. Your time. David Urena. David Urena. Not here. What about, you're here. Okay, so now you're down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 minutes.
I think that's plenty of time. I might not even hit 15 minutes, so. Okay, so can I begin? All right, I'll go ahead and hit the show. I'm actually super nervous. I feel like I'm coming up here the first time. So the pressure is on whatever time's coming up here. My name is Christopher Vella. I live at 9241 East 11th Avenue. I'm in Ybor City, historic Ybor City, Tampa, Florida. Obviously, I'm not paid to be here the numerous times I've come up to this board. but I do not want to maintain a heavily subsidized lifestyle over minorities, over people like myself. I'm asking this MPO board right now to remove line 27 and 28 from the TIP. Both, as you know, are operational improvements. Line 27 is north of the downtown interchange going over to Barris Avenue. The DTI, well, that's going to be looked at with operational improvements, which I am presuming will include some widening, building this interstate flyover ramps closer to my neighborhood. Now, not all operational improvements are small, and they don't really serve the greater good. Whenever in my neighborhood someone mentions an operational improvement, it's kind of like a word to run away. It's a fearful word. Ybor City has been ground zero for an enormous amount of time. Back in the early 70s when the MPO was founded, so let's just say like 73, 74, that's when we first saw the first operational improvement by our state DOT. That's when we started to see streets like 12th Avenue, 14th Avenue. These are roads that would carry you to destinations of landmarks in Ybor City. Those same roads became exit ramps to better service Interstate 4. But with that said, it ended up hurting our neighborhood even more. Like, we saw more property loss. We saw significant demolition happening with houses. An MPO has been put in place in the 70s by the federal government to be a repository, a container of all public comments. You all are comprised of elected officials from authorities, from cities, county, from Hillsborough County, excuse me, to take all of our comments behind me and basically represent us and what we feel. And this first step with the MPO coming in the 1970s, we saw this operational improvement that was absolutely devastating to Ybor City. 10 years later, so this is 10 years after the interstate was constructed, roughly. Going to the 1980s, FDOT again wanted another operational improvement in historic Ybor City. We saw retention ponds being dropped, and then Nucio Parkway was finalized, 14th and 15th Street, which you would head over to Segunda or Cascaden Park or Pool, became a very dangerous pedestrian passage. We didn't see any of the cutoff access points in my neighborhood to VM, for example. Someone's got wind chimes going on. We never see any access with that. So we have 11 points in my neighborhood that were completely cut off from the rest of the neighborhood because of these operational point improvements. If you know anything about Ybor City, we had some really cool immigrant civil engineers that came over a long time ago. When they came to Ybor City, it was just a big swamp. And they did drain the swamp, but they built a great town. They built a really good, diverse, innovative, beautiful town where we saw commerce at so many levels, culture. It helped founded the city of Tampa. And here we are in the 1980s and 70s, allowing a DOT to bring that back into Ybor. You can walk down by 14th or 15th Street in Nucio Parkway. That isn't an Ybor City design. Somehow, in the beginning of this MPO, we became disconnected. We allowed these things to happen. And we just became obsessed of just saying, you know what, it's a small little improvement. It's a small little improvement. What's it gonna do? Well, I'll tell you what happened. In 2006, we completed a massive operational improvement. You guys probably remember all that construction that happened in early 2001. There was over 400 properties that were gone from that effort. We still saw a lot of devastation that I think really more so on the West Tampa side. A lot of beautiful oak trees were removed, properties were gone. It was still repeating the same situation because, well, FDOT needed safety. They needed capacity. They needed to improve their operation. And here we are right now. I'm at this podium after 4 years of talking about another operational project, TBX, and another one, TBNext, and now these guys. It's just a rebranding. It's a double down. It's going to not get us where we need to go. I don't even need to go into the rhetoric of induced capacity because it is a proven fact, and you saw those like explanations. So operation improvements are always for the interstate. It's only for cars. It's not for the people. And in no way with these operational improvements, especially with line 28 with the DTI, can FDOT contain the air particulates or noise? These are elevated express ramps that they want to reconfigure. These ramps will be closer to houses in my neighborhood in historic Ybor. They will also be closer to houses on 14th Avenue and VM. It will impact a community that, according to the NPO Health Atlas, at a 95 to 100% cancer risk from diesel particulates beyond other neighborhoods. So this information is online. You guys can access this. This is what the county has studied. Even if we account for all the air particulates, I'm still at 90% if we just kind of generalize them all. And these are brake dust, diesel particulates, any type of fumes that come from vehicles, dust, and just in general, we have a high level of chronic diseases in Ybor, especially where I live in historic Ybor. As you're aware, that we've come up here, we talked about the American Lung Association, and they've always said, you guys have an F. Maybe you have a D, but then it goes back to an F. So we're not really caring about the quality of life that we have stripped away for the past 60 years for the population, a very diverse, culturally rich population that was there nearly a half a century before the interstate. We continue to keep on doing these operational improvements and putting people's lives at risk and really just putting a death sentence on people like me. And it's completely unfair. If we talk about the crashes, FDOT comes up and they say, well, we need to improve the safety of the interstate. So I did some digging, and I ended up getting some data on Hillsborough County on the state roads, so the non-interstate state roads. And here's the numbers. For non-interstate state roads, we've seen 33,585 car crashes. I think that goes well beyond what's happening with the slow fender benders that are going on a DTI. Over 133 were dead. So this is 2018. We saw 544 of those crashes that were pedestrian. 498 were bicycle related. And all 14,555 were injured. So again, this has nothing to do with the interstate. This is about roads that go to communities in every corner in Hillsborough County. So imagine if you guys were to make an ask to FDOT and say, well, what if we were to take the $335 million, right, and put it into making our streets safer, walkable, to be more accessible, better connected? How can we reduce down to Vision Zero? And you guys know very well that that's a program that the county has right now. I have times have volunteered for that. A lot of us behind me have volunteered for that. We want safer streets. You can't have pedestrian deaths on interstates. Bicycles are not allowed. People are not allowed, obviously. You can't have cars crashing into buildings. But that does happen on roads that are near schools. That happens to roads that are near parks, places of worships, and jobs. It has to end today. And I know that FDOT's going to tell you, we can't repurpose the money, but that's not the point. It's you drawing a line in the sand today and saying that we need to take action right now. We can't afford to have this many crashes and fatalities. It's just pure negligence in funding. So we need to look at having a one-to-one match for every type of dollar that we're putting down for local projects. FDOT has to step up to the plate and say, yes, we're going to help you make streets safer and have transit projects occur so we can have choices and equity on our road system. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a double down on FDOT's plans. Line 28 with the downtown interchange, and also 27, few were unaware of what was going on with this. I was confused. I was very confused, especially with line under 28. Unlike the Seminole Heights meeting, my neighborhood association, I've never actually had a public hearing in Ybor City about these operational improvements. I know for a fact because I went to the committee meetings. So the committee meetings are designed, to serve you, to provide you guidance to make decisions. Those committees didn't have the information on line item 28. They didn't know about this operational improvement that's before you right now. So they couldn't make a really good recommendation for you. They had to make something on the spot, and they did. As far as I'm aware, the majority of the committee meetings never heard any public hearing or had that data in relation to the operational improvements going through Seminole Heights. And these are very important things. We have to have a level of consistency. And I know that some of you guys look at this tip and you're probably scratching your head like I am, like, what am I looking at? This is crazy. And I think it's just the amount of information and consistency. I don't think it's been fair to you guys. I don't think and it certainly hasn't been fair to our community. The way how FDOT's been presenting themselves and presenting how they want to execute some of these plans. Even worse, hearing on the radio with FDOT on W88.5, I'm tired of the ultimatums. FDOT should not say the money's going to go to Orlando. That's a public serving agency. What right do they have to take our own tax money and hold it above our heads and your heads and say, well, we're going to run over to Orlando? Especially with the amount of death that is occurring on state roads, right? Especially the amount of blight and pollution that they're putting on minorities like myself. It is completely absurd. They need to step back, and you guys really need to press them hard. They can't act this way. It's unethical, completely unethical. As you're probably not aware, FDOT has already gotten to a contract to work on I-275 with a $31 million contract. They hired a contractor to start working right now. This area, I-275, everything I'm talking about right now is under an SEIS. We can remove these items because we're going to have to go to a record of decision. And what I mean by that is that all this effort for the past 4 years will be ultimately decided in 2020. This is a very premature, ill-step procedure that FDOT is engaging right now. They want to systematically break down neighborhoods like mine to make it easier to push projects like this. And then what's going to happen after 2020, they'll just go for the biggest large blowout of the downtown interchange and potentially other segments of the community. It is not fair. We deserve at least some time here. Let's have some diplomacy. Let's have some respect. So the reality is to me, Line 28 is still a widening project. It's going to be, the DTI is going to be closer to homes. We're going to see our local streets be treated like gun alleys. A lot of the traffics or crashes that you see are coming off of high-speed roads that service the interstate. Bush, Fowler, Nebraska Avenue. In fact, I think we had 2 deaths recently at Nebraska Avenue, and that's near I-275. Fort Alaska is another dangerous road. Highland, we've seen a lot of crashes there. We need to start focusing on whenever we tweak the interstate to look at those impacts, and I don't think that has been really looked upon. And no, I don't want another study. And no, I don't need FDOT to come back and try to prove themselves. I think they've proven that they're failing at getting this public outreach and educating you about this process and myself and the people behind me. I just want to talk a little bit about our group, and I want to hype us up. When I'm talking about the community at large, we have remained consistent, and I think we've been winning. I think, we got the reset, we got conversations going, and certainly enjoy talking to some of you about this. And despite that we've been pushing back, it hasn't hurt growth. We still saw billions and billions of dollars being built in the city of Tampa with new development. Same thing with the county. We are thriving, we're in the spotlight. We are featured in all sorts of articles as a city, as a county. Every effort that I've been doing hasn't been slowing us down. We've been having some really good conversations, some good content, but we need to make that transition over to transit. We need to make that transition to have a fairness and equity in our transportation system. I just want to remind you that we also supported the transportation tax, and the 77,000 county voters supported this tax that doesn't involve highway widening at all, one bit. Same with the opposition. Even though they hype it up, they voted for the same thing. They put a lot of money in that effort just to have a bunch of money that doesn't involve interstate expansion. The Boulevard project is a healing project. I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. Nothing from FDOT that's presented to us is about reconnecting. The Boulevard project connects every single east and west connection from East Tampa to west, all the way up to the university area. So just consider that. We need to fix our problems. We need to have fairness. And we just need to tell FDOT to pack up and go home. Thank you.
I thought you were going to use all your time. Nothing, that's okay. Nicole, number 42, Nicole Perry.
Thank you. My name is Nicole Perry, 33604, soon to be 33602. Please help Tampa progress into the future and not be stuck in the destructive ways of the past. Please vote to remove line items 27 and 28 from the TIP and any future plans of highway expansion in the urban core. This issue is especially important and sensitive to my family, who is currently in the process of renovating a home in the area, basically right at the epicenter of the downtown interchange. After falling in love with the area and years of trying to move into historic Tampa Heights, we came across an opportunity to move into the area while helping to save one of the historic homes that make the area such an amazing place. FDOT was selling one of the lots it owns with the stipulation that the abandoned house next door had to be picked up and moved onto it. While the proximity to the highway as well as the complexity of the purchase were drawbacks, the community garden, greenway, community center, and walkability to the Riverwalk all made up for it. FDOT told us that they were selling the lot because it was completely unaffected by future proposed plans, that they wanted to save the historic home, which currently sits abandoned, and that the lot next door was not for sale at this time. We were never explicitly told that the lot next door could become the highway, or that all of the community features we loved and that helped the lot appraise for what it did would be wiped out by some of the plans. Only after having spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours working towards the extremely complicated and costly ordeal, we learned through our own research that the lot next door may become the highway. As if selling a young family with 2 children under the age of 4, a house that would have the highway as its neighbor wasn't bad enough, after closing on the home of May 2nd of this year, we came across FDOT's interactive renderings of the expansions in which 2 of the options show that not only the lot next door, but you guessed it, our family's lot completely wiped out. The lot that we now have a sizable mortgage on, have spent at this point thousands of hours working towards making our forever home, and are currently in the extremely costly process of picking up and moving as well as renovating. The plan's complete disregard for the well-being of the residents of Tampa is unbelievable and devastating. Any highway widening in the urban core would negatively affect our future home, family, and also have an extremely detrimental effect on the livelihoods and property values of all those in historic neighborhoods. Further highway widening will result in unsafe conditions for our 2 young girls and many others around. There will be environmental pollution, noise pollution, not to mention general hazards that exist with highways. The last thing that Tampa needs in regards to its transportation options are wider highways. We need sustainable options like mass transit. We need to look at innovative ideas such as the boulevard and not car-centric ideas of the past. Highways have already done enough to destroy much of Tampa's urban history. Increasing the number of lanes has proven time and again across the world to be the wrong choice. It is unsustainable, short-sighted, and reactionary. This is the time in Tampa's history to choose what type of city we want to become and leave for our future generations. Do we want to leave a heavily polluted city void of much of its past that continues? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Number 43, Chris Gleason.
Thanks. Christopher Gleason. I urge you to prioritize improved transit, safer streets, and smarter planning for the next 5 years of the Transportation Improvement Program. As the annual meeting includes projects from long-range transportation plan to be considered for the most importance, I urge you to think into the future and make decisions that are long-term solutions for our county. Hillsborough County residents voted last year to tax themselves for a better transportation network, well-maintained roads, safer roads for drivers, bikers, and walkers, congestion relief by fixing poor design causing bottlenecks, but no new road expansion. 45% of the surtax doesn't even involve cars, but transit options, whether they are buses, trains, ferries, or anything else that gives people options other than a personal automobile. The added tax dollars moving forward makes things possible for a county that are a better solution to our transportation problem than more lanes and more cars. Development of CSX lines between USF and downtown for commuter rail, with further opportunities to expand in Hillsborough County and other counties with pre-existing tracks. Water transit is important to our region because of geography that exists here. It has been shown to have great demand if available to its residents. Further build-outs of I-275 is a bad idea because that is what has been going on for 50 years. It does not reduce congestion. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is insanity. Today is 3 lanes to 4 lanes. How long until FDOT wants 5 lanes in each direction? We cannot build ourselves out of congestion. Strike TB Next projects, Table 2, line items 27, 28. From the tip, no further action, no build for I-275 north to Bears Avenue from downtown interchange. With some concessions, FDOT's plans are still laser focused on TBX. The original plan they brought to the Tampa Bay area 5 years ago, rooted in the 1980s, is outdated and unwanted. As much as I try to believe to the contrary, Tallahassee still has plans eventually to get the original TBX plan put in place. Thank you.
Number 44, Mit Patel.
Good evening. I'm Mit Patel. Number 44. When I got handed this number, I was like, if I'm number 45, I'm walking out of here. But just a little joke to get started. But there's not much to reiterate. We've been doing this for a very long time. In fact, I see new faces on the MPO board that I remember being on this side of the equation 4 years ago, which is a nice sight to see. When I started at least 4 years ago, I knew very little about how local politics worked. Through the process, becoming an activist, it was very challenging at first. You don't want to be introduced to the Florida Department of Transportation as your first experience dealing with a bureaucracy in this country. It's just not a good thing. And I say that with all due respect because a lot of those people have changed now. And even though I'm not paid to be here, and a lot of the people out here are not paid to be here, a lot of y'all are paid to be here, and a lot of them are paid to be here. And I actually respect the fact that they are trying to do a better job in what they're doing. But at the end of the day, TBX, TB Next, it's the same thing. What do they say? You can't put lipstick on a pig. It's still the same thing. The whole thing I heard today is basically the same thing I heard back in 2015. You had a bunch of organizations that per se that they're for economic well-being and all this nonsense come up, say they're for it. And most of the community folks and people that really understand the matter, like the professor from USF, like Rick Fernandez, like Chris Vella, that have all this time speaking, which I don't know how they get, tell you why it should not have been built, talked about. We shouldn't even be here today even discussing those words because there's other things that we should be doing that would be so much better. That being said, I don't believe this MPO board is really going to end TBX tonight, just from past experience. But I do believe that the citizens will keep fighting, that they will keep showing up year after year, dealing with whoever FDOT throws out there. And I do like David a lot better than Paul and Debbie. He seems a very likable character. And that's saying a lot because I had a lot of animosity towards the Department of Transportation. I wouldn't say hate because I'm not a hater. I was taught not to hate. But they were something of more than that, man. My blood pressure rises even when I talk about them. But, you know, that's done. I'm looking forward to the future. I've seen a lot of good things happen over the last 4 years as far as the conversation being changed, and I thank the community for that.
Thank you. Nikki Rice. Jennifer Hart, you're using your time, okay. Nina Tadlock, you're using your time. Okay, you have 9 minutes, Ms. Rice.
Okay, Nikki Rice, and 33604. And I also serve on our CAC. I will not be speaking for them tonight, but I will be referencing some things that have happened there. I want to attack this from a different angle, and I know you've heard a lot of stuff, but I would really like you voting members to listen to me on this issue. We've got to meet in the middle somewhere tonight, because what I'm seeing is What I feel like I saw tonight was a job interview for the Chamber of Commerce with their young emerging leaders. I saw seats for reserved people. I saw the partnership and the same voices being loud, and then I heard the community. And it seems like it's not making a dent of difference in where you sit. I can look around right now and tell how you're going to vote, just from experience of doing this every single year. And I would like to address line 27 and line 28, and specifically in regards to the long-range plan. Right now, both line 27 and 28 are in the long-range plan for the MPO. That means that if we strike these tonight and we ask FDOT to do what we've asked them to do, and that is actually come to us, and I'm going to go through both of those separately, with something that is actually palatable for everyone, all we have to do is make an amendment to change the tip. That's all that has to happen. This is not the end of the conversation. It can absolutely be put right back in because it's in the long-range plan. So, and on number 27, specifically, that's in regards to the portion that goes up 275 to MLK to Bears. We were supposed to complete a PD&E study. Rick Fernandez brought this up earlier. And they were supposed to come to the table with an option. Well, this option, tonight I heard young people who claim to be emerging business leaders and young people who claim they have vision for this city. Well, their vision of this so-called transit option, this bus on these 2 lanes, what we're proposing here is it's still going to be risen, it's not going to be stopping in neighborhoods, and it's just going to have a bus that flies down the interior lane. That is not a transit solution to take cars off the road on any level. Are we going to build giant platforms for people to access this? Because what I'm hearing is an ability for people to supposedly commute all the way from Pasco over to Pinellas, and I'm hearing the priority being Pasco and being Pinellas. The purpose of this board is to make Hillsborough County the priority. If you're paying attention to the state politics right now, it is very clear what the agenda is in regards to highway expansion in this state. The priority right now is we are going to build toll roads across this state. We're going to line the pockets of developers and create whole new pocket communities. Here in Hillsborough County, we do have a thriving job market. We do actually have the potential for great expansion economically. And yet I didn't hear one of these young people tonight come up here and talk about some of the visionary projects on the table that FDOT could absolutely fund over 275 on a bus rapid transit that's not accessible to any of the arterial lanes or roads. So it is just infuriating. I mean, I feel like I'm on crazy pills here, okay? So number 27, they did not follow through on what we requested when we initially told them to come back with something else. What they came back with was 2 lanes, and if you believe those lanes are not going to eventually become tolled or have an impact on the community and actually are somehow going to alleviate traffic, now you're going to have more people coming down Hillsborough Avenue and all these roads that FDOT is supposed to be in charge of that are endless possibility for development and change that would actually help traffic flow better in this city. Hillsborough right now is a great avenue for them to be investing on to take traffic off the road. If you ever sat on Hillsborough Avenue all the way from 19 up to 275, the focus here is wrong. On number 28, this was actually tonight, I don't have to make this point because tonight, I apologize for having to do this, but our delegation from FDOT's in the back. Tonight, David Gwen stood up here and made the case to take 28 out, and yet nobody has brought this up tonight. These are his words. He said tonight to you that A and D are off the table. He talked about how people didn't respond well to A through D as options. He talked to, we're going to speak to the community again. We're going to find things that the community wants. We're going to talk about impact. We're going to research this. Great. Go ahead. And when you have an actual solution for Malfunction Junction, this entire region would love to hear it. Because right now, one of the solutions that was in that conversation in the A through D options was 24 lanes alone in Malfunction Junction. If you were to call 400 people randomly in this county and say, how do you feel about making it a 24-lane situation down there at Malfunction Junction? That sounds great, right? That's really going to alleviate traffic. There's not a person who would sign on to that. These are not solid solutions. And then guess what? They're going to feed right into 2 more lanes rolling down 275. So you've created, yet again, one way for people to get around. Tonight I heard a gentleman from my own neighborhood who had some great ideas, but he talked about taking 275 from his house in Seminole Heights over to the West Shore District every day. I'm your neighbor. I'd like him to know that he could totally take Columbus and get off of 275. Okay? We have a lot of people that are new to our region. We do, and we have an immense amount of growth coming. But if we constantly tell people their solution is going down 275 or going on to the new toll roads we're going to build, by the way, most people don't realize we're going to have possibly elevated tolls running all the way from downtown across the bridge. I can't afford to take them. I'm not going to take them. This is not actually changing the traffic patterns. It's adding a solution for people who actually have the financial means to take them. But I'm not going to go there right now. That stuff is funded. All that stuff is in our long-range plan. If tonight, here in our county, if we don't stand up together, Republicans, Democrats, I don't care, independents, just once say to Tallahassee, just once say to the agencies at FDOT that we care tremendously about what the face of our region looks like, don't worry, they're not short on lobbyists. They'll be back to make sure it gets back in the tip. Okay, like I assure you they'll find a way somehow to have a meeting with you like they clearly did the Chamber and the Tampa Bay Partnership, because I can assure you that those kids that came in here tonight that were super young and excited and are here in Tampa have no idea what is actually going on with transportation. After 4 years of doing this as an advocate, I still only feel like I understand 25%, even though I know I have a greater comprehension than that. It's an exhaustive, intense topic. And it's very easy to manipulate and make basic. This is not basic. We need to prioritize Hillsborough County. It's not about the urban core. It's not about just, development in South County. It's not about people getting from the burbs to downtown. It's about what kind of vision for our city do we want. FDOT has a lot of roads here. We have a lot of investment opportunities. We have the CSX opportunity. Sitting here tonight is the actual airport, the aviation authority that was taken out of the presentation earlier as not being priority, or the port authority. Well, guess what? We spent hundreds of millions of dollars building a train at the airport, which by the way is completely rad, and takes you nowhere besides a parking garage to rent a vehicle to get on the highway. Okay? Meanwhile, FDOT purchased a giant lot on Cypress and a hotel because they were going to make a multimodal center there on West Shore. There's a priority project for FDOT to put in the tip. Build us that. Help us build that. Help us build a multimodal center downtown. Help us connect to the Gateway in Pinellas and make this a regional effort to get around this community. So if you do take this out tonight, you're just saying, this isn't an acceptable solution. You didn't give us what we needed. We want you to come back and give us something else. And I promise you, it's going to have a huge impact on how much power we have long-term here in Hillsborough County, because we are slowly having it chipped away from us with the tri-regional thing on the table and everything else going on in Tallahassee. Prioritize your community, keep your seats if you're an elected, and please make this happen. I appreciate your time.
Josh Frank. Adam Metz. Okay. Josh, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you. It says 3, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay, perfect. My name's Josh Frank, and I'm a young professional. I feel like this is Alcoholics Anonymous. So, firstly, I want to start by reading my prepared notes, and then I got a little extra time. I feel like I have to knock down a lot of straw men tonight. Firstly, when this board decided several years back to keep parts of this project in the tip with the conditions of meeting this community's needs, that was a tremendous step in the right direction. I'm here today to inform you that those needs have not been met. I know some of you, for example, were at the community workshop in the basement of the Seminole Heights United Methodist Church and heard that firsthand. These people have shown up to meetings, submitted comments, and participated in this process for years, 4 years. Unlike our neighbors in Pasco or Pinellas County, or some others in this room or downstairs, these people commit more than just funding for polling or writing op-eds in the Times when things look unfavorable. Our neighbors commit their health, their well-being, their children's well-being, and their property. It is their voice that should be heard the most. Secondly, this project needs to be removed from the tip for one reason. It's a bad investment. Any additional capacity on the interstate is not only repeating mistakes made 50 years ago, it makes addressing those mistakes even harder. Which, by the way, the interstate capacity does not just impact the interstate, okay? We have engineered our entire region around the interstate. Tampa, Florida being one-way pairs, that's to supplement the interstate. 14th and 15th, 21st and 22nd, Hillsborough Ave, Bush Boulevard, Fowler, Fletcher, Bears, they've all been engineered to facilitate traffic on the interstate. So when you add capacity to the interstate, you add capacity, or you add congestion not just there, but you add congestion to all of those other systems in concert with that capacity on the interstate. And so I don't want you to think about this in a vacuum. This is systemic. If you add more cars in this corridor, they will impact Florida. They will impact the Florida corridor study. It will impact the Fowler USF corridors that we heard some gentlemen here tonight talk about. It will impact the downtown exits. We don't have a plan for any of those. It will impact the streetcar extension. If all of a sudden we add a new lane on the interstate and we have an increase in 25% capacity, because there's 3 lanes now, you add another one, that's 4, right? My math may be wrong there, but you add a significant amount of capacity to the interstate. Who's to say, oh, well, guess what? We can't give you that lane on Florida Ave for the streetcar now because we need it. The capacity and the level of service says so. Our formula, the computer spits it out, and that's what we need to do. So again, think about this from the system that we have created and how that impacts things on a larger scale. Any additional capacity on the interstate, excuse me, sorry, got a little lost there. These lanes will fill up, and we will be worse off than where we are today. You have an opportunity tonight to make a decision that all the other MPO board members had an opportunity to make. Chris Vela went through every other operational improvement under the sun, and each one of those that got approved had the opportunity to say no, and they didn't. You have that opportunity to say no, we're done. And that, I think, if you were to ask those boards if they could come back and change their minds, they might. I think they might. This is our shot to invest in mobility for generations, our greatest possibility for equitable growth, and a chance to repair and surpass a half-century of damage. We now have legitimate attention and support nationally. Tonight, you can illustrate it is possible to challenge ourselves to think bigger, to how we should do better than TBX or Tampa Bay Next, or whatever preferred alternative form of interstate we're given. This is how we become America's next great city. I ask you to draw a line in the sand and say we are finished repeating the mistakes of the 1950s, remove 27 and 28 from the tip, and commit to what your constituents have asked for, which, by the way, all for transportation, everybody who invested in that, both sides of the aisle, specifically says, in terms of limits on new automobile lane capacity, agencies are prohibited from expending any funds from the categories, etc., for new automobile lane capacity. For the purposes of this section, new automobile lane capacity means projects that consist of adding additional lanes for automobile traffic to existing roads or streets that are not related to intersection capacity improvement, or constructing new roads or streets. The people who voted for all for transportation did not vote for capacity projects. So when the partnership comes in here and conducts a study and says 401 people in our county support addressing the interstate, what they don't ask them is, do you support more cars on the interstate? No. They say, do you support improvements? I've seen the study. I don't know how many of you have read the entire study, but the questions were very specific. Do you support improvements? Didn't say anything about capacity. If you ask those same people, do you support more cars on the interstate? I guarantee you the answer is no. The solution to Florida, Nebraska, congestion, pollution, land value, safety, other corridors, regional transit, all that stuff that's super critical for this corridor is not by adding lanes, It's by having fewer cars. Invest in alternatives to have fewer cars, and all of these problems will go away. Thank you.
Number 47, Jose Cayo. Jose Cayo. Number 40, well, skip 40, 49, Susan McClog.
Hello. I'm here from living in Seminole Heights to ask you to please strike number 27, Susan McClung. I'd like to say what many people have said, that FDOT is just obsessed with the interstate and doing things with the interstate. And we really need to get away from the idea that this one artery is going to solve our problems. We have transportation problems, but they're not going to be solved by this one artery in Tampa. You heard some fear mongering about, the evacuations that won't happen. Millions of people are going to die if this project isn't done. I just remind you, if you were here 30 years ago, that there was a rain event that took place, I think it was in 1990, and flooded I-4 just east of Tampa, flooded all lanes. Thank goodness there wasn't a hurricane, because that's an evacuation route. And it was flooded. The reason it was flooded is one employee at I think it's whoever opens the gate for the Hillsborough River to get our water, did not open the floodgate, and so the river overflowed and came onto the interstate. I say this because one person didn't do their job and caused this flooded interstate for 5 days. We're not talking about a couple hours. Only semis could get there. Some of you may remember. One incident, one overturned semi. This can just shut down an interstate. And we know what happened in Texas when there was 1 million people stuck on the roads, and instead of staying in their home during the hurricane, they lived through the hurricane on the road, blocked in traffic. Having only one evacuation route, only having one way to get around in Tampa, this is a huge problem. And I think if you really think about it, I know people, I don't know if they'll ride the bus, but people will take other roads if they can get somewhere on those roads without stoplight after stoplight after stoplight. If the roads overall were improved, turning some way into one-way streets, even just timing the lights has been proven to help move traffic. Minor things that don't cost a fortune. And we listened to the FDOT representative talk about how horrible that intersection is, the malfunction junction. They're the ones that created it. And not in the dark ages, they created this horrible situation where the interstates come together about 15 or 20 years ago. And they worked on it 15 or 20 years ago to make it better from what it was. And it didn't. You're probably sitting here thinking it's been bad for 10 or 15
Thank you, ma'am.
years, and they caused it.
Thank you. Brenton Winterick.
My name is Brenton Wernick. I'm a professor at USF. My primary mode of transportation is a bicycle. My husband doesn't have a driver's license. Many of my neighbors in my neighborhood in Seminole Heights, across the street, around the corner from me, don't have driver's licenses. My family chose our neighborhood based on the availability of the transit options that were available there and the accessibility of me to my work via bicycle. That's why we picked our neighborhood. I'm looking at this and experiencing this as a sort of deja vu. I lived through and I've resided in neighborhoods that experienced these types of interstate expansions when I was living in Wisconsin, when I was living in Minnesota. The predictions, the things we talk about when we say induced demand, that's exactly what I personally experienced. I saw that the congestion immediately returned to exactly the same levels, the exact same unfortunate experiences, frustration, lack of speed to move through the area immediately after construction was done. But not only that, worse than that, the air pollution increased dramatically. The noise increased dramatically. The proposed aesthetic solution to use sound walls is completely ineffective. What the sound walls that they built when they were widening in Minnesota served to do was to direct the sound, the new sound, the expanded sound of increased capacity directly up into my windows in my third floor apartment. All that these sound walls do, they do not prevent sound pollution, they do not prevent the ill effects. All they do is direct them directly at our lowest income residents who live in apartment buildings and high-rise complexes. This proposed solution is a net negative of quality life for the people that are living in Hillsborough County in the central Tampa area. And we need to reject it and say that that's not an acceptable solution, that increasing capacity cannot be part of any proposed solution for addressing safety issues on this interstate. Thank you.